Kim was falling from the roof, and in Kim's attempts to understand what was happening, he had a graduation date coming up soon. He wondered if he had endured all that hardship for nothing, but he was certain of one thing, that this was the day of his death. But not quite. He survived, but lived in a vegetative state inside one of the medical facilities. One of the nurses pressured his grandmother to pull the plug because she had never seen a patient wake up from such a condition. The grandmother erupted in anger, determined not to give up on her grandson. After his fall from the roof, he was described as being in a vegetative state. Kim could feel, touch, and heard his grandmother crying. He thought things would get better, and that since he had never been sick before, he would be back on his feet soon. But in that dark world, he wasn't allowed to do anything. The grandmother held his hand, affirming that she would not abandon him because she had raised him after losing his parents. She begged for any sign from him. Kim tried to move with all the strength he had, but it was no use. Later, his brother visited him, saying that those who had bullied Kim were now violating him, and he couldn't take it anymore. The grandmother started working at a restaurant to manage the hospital treatment costs, but she got injured while working. The brother lamented what had happened, begging Kim to wake up. Kim, in his solitude, thought that all of this was a dream and that if he waited a little, he would wake up from the nightmare. But he had no luck. After 3 years, Kim was still there. He noticed his brother Kijin's absence from visiting for a while. Nurses near him talked about Kim's grandfather's death, but they didn't seem very sad, because now they could turn up the TV volume. Kim remembered everyone who had wronged him: Park Min, Cho Young-tae, Jung Min-ho, Ki Chang, Ode, Kim Yong, and even the teachers who covered for them. He wished he could go back in time to the beginning to destroy each one of them. The image of revenge hammered his head relentlessly. The years passed. 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and revenge never left him. After 10 years, he despaired. Finally, Kim's eye shed a single tear as he begged any creature to end his life. Suddenly, a man appeared before him, and Kim opened his eyes. He woke up thinking it was the same day, but it wasn't. He found himself inside his classroom. He thought it was a dream, so he pinched his cheek and felt pain, but he wasn't sure yet, so he took a pen and stabbed it into his leg to confirm he had returned, truly returned. Behind him, he saw one of his bullies, Park, hitting someone in front of everyone without anyone able to stop him. Kim realized that this moment was the starting point of all his pain, that moment he was returning to. He snuck up behind Min and addressed him with one word, ordering him to stop. Park was taken aback by his courage and mocked him with sarcasm, but Kim delivered a direct punch to his cheek, stopping his mockery. It seemed Kim had returned to his first year in high school, the day everything changed. He remembered it clearly. Park was listening to the lesson carelessly. A bully who bothered his peers and loved a legendary online game. He approached a classmate who didn't play sports named Lee Jung and told him to level up his character in the game for him. His classmate agreed with a stutter, so Park considered that confirmation and made him a game follower, and his grades were neglected. He also demanded that he provide his personal money for the game. Lee's tension reached a breaking point, so he snapped at Park, demanding he take responsibility in the game. That was the first time Kim witnessed violence before his eyes. He didn't want trouble, but he knew that Lee helped him with studies from time to time, so he didn't confine himself to watching. He tried to intervene, but a classmate stopped him, warning that conflict with Park was like digging his own grave. Kim knew the consequence, yet he stepped forward. He wasn't weak in sports and had never lost a fight before. The teacher arrived, so the situation was somewhat contained, but from that day on, Park and his gang bullied Kim daily. He was dragged and trampled without time to recover. It was nothing less than hell. The scene returns to the present where Park received the punch. He tried to retaliate, but Kim grabbed his head and slammed it on the table until it bled profusely. He slapped and cursed him violently, recalling the details of his desire for revenge that he had engraved in his mind over the years. He threw him against the school lockers and continued pounding him with his leg. He stared at Park with a look that held what he had kept all those years. He thought about everyone waiting for him to rain blows on him. A chair was suddenly thrown in his direction. The perpetrators shouted, asking him to stop, but Kim looked at them indifferently, repeating that he didn't want to. A huge man approached his position. He noted that this was called Park Min-che's gang because Park led the bullying, and the big guy in front of him was the strongest, Kang Chang. They exchanged looks until a girl ran to the classroom announcing the teacher's arrival, so they fled, vowing revenge for their leader. During the lesson, Park reflected on what had happened and recalled the cruelty he faced. He swore he would kill Kim. Members of his gang would gather here after the lesson ended. He thought he had let his guard down. There was no logic for a scoundrel like him to be defeated in an honorable way, even though he was class president and had restrained Park's bullying from time to time, but he hadn't crossed the line like today. Park thought about how to deal with Kim. In another class, Park's companions discussed the fight and took a stance on Kim's recklessness. It seemed some plan was prepared for him. One of them asked if rumors about the stories had been spread, but whatever the reason, Kim had insulted them in front of everyone, and if the situation was left like this, people wouldn't take them seriously, so even if they received orders, they would seize the opportunity to stomp on him. Kang was boiling inside. When the teacher left Kim's class, Park got up ready to drag him out, but he wasn't given the chance because Kim acted first impulsively, executing a flying kick directly to his face. He grabbed Park's head, saying they had to finish what they started. It seemed things wouldn't end well for Park. After the lesson ended, the gang got up heading to Kim's class to beat him up. When they arrived, many gathered at the windows looking in. Yong, the one with dark hair, realized what was happening and rushed to the classroom, but he found that Kim was beating Park. Blood gushed from Kim, and Park's matter was finished. Red stains appeared on their clothes. Kang rushed toward Kim. Kim acknowledged that this man was the only problem in front of him. The solution was clear: fighting without rules. He pulled a lock from the lockers and hit Kang's head with it, knocking him unconscious, and rained blows on him. Then the other two stared in shock. But Kim didn't stop. He jumped on Kang, slapped him, and rained punches on him without caring, even if someone approached him and attacked him by surprise from behind. He had prepared long for this battle, but his body seemed less ready to continue. Nevertheless, he persevered and had to take out another one. He turned to Yong, who was now trembling to the core. He noticed that Kim wasn't this strong before, and sensed him as a terrifying creature emanating a frightening aura. Kim approached and prepared to punch him with a back-breaking blow. A teacher appeared at the right moment and saved Yong. Kim was taken out to the teacher's room where he was reprimanded for his behavior. The teacher felt great concern because as his mentor, he would bear responsibility if he didn't act, so he placed all the blame on Kim. He spent time scolding him, saying that in long years of teaching, he had never seen a student do what Kim did. Kim interrupted him calmly, reassuring him not to exaggerate. He reminded him that this wasn't the first incident of violence in the school. He offered to use that trick to bury the case without escalation so he wouldn't be held accountable. The teacher couldn't stand what seemed like insolence, so he slapped Kim, which caught the attention of the other teachers to what had happened. Kim reflected on all this and realized that his death wasn't just because of bullying, but because of cowardly adults who were too busy with more important matters. He remembered precisely how that teacher who constantly took bribes lived, a piece of filth that couldn't be called human. Kim warned him that if he didn't stop, he would reveal to everyone the bribes he received from parents like Yong's parents, and yet Kim had other things to disclose. For example, the relationship he was having with the English teacher. It seemed Kim had gained complete control of the situation. In the past, Kim tried to approach this teacher asking for help, but he evaded responsibility and didn't punish the bullies. For reporting him, he was beaten repeatedly until the teacher noticed only once. Kim thought that would solve his problem, but he was met with complete disregard from the teacher. After that, he tried to find a solution. He took matters into his own hands, trying to fight for a chance at peace, but he was defeated physically and numerically. He landed only one blow, and that blow was used against him as Young seized the opportunity to cause more problems for Kim. Even in the school violence committee, he bore the punishment alone. After the coma, he realized he couldn't achieve revenge with his strength alone, but adults' involvement must also be resolved for his revenge to be realized in its truest sense. The teacher was engulfed in amazement at how much he knew. He looked around to see if anyone had heard his words. Kim announced that from now on, the teacher must be careful in speaking before uttering. He revealed more information to him, including that his acquaintances introduced him to Yong's family through an older college student, so he paid attention to Yong before he entered school, and in return, the teacher received a monthly amount. He revealed the teacher's relationship with a married English teacher who had 3 children and knowledge of the motel they frequented. The teacher stood defeated while Kim threatened him that he would crush his life if he didn't stop. He mentioned that even if he had to leave school, he would destroy his life. Kim remembered that when he was in the 3rd year, the teacher's relationship was exposed, and his wife came to school and slapped him hard, and rumors spread that the wife owned most of the shared property, and because of that, the teacher would become a card he sought to exploit, to plant fear if the truth was revealed. The teacher humiliated himself, asking for Kim's orders. He replied that he would do as commanded. Kim suggested a simple plan. The teacher should remain ignoring what would happen as usual, but instead of working for Jung and his companions, he should now start covering Kim's incidents, and if he adhered to these instructions until graduation, Kim wouldn't reveal his secrets. The teacher bowed again, vowing to do his best. But Kim rushed to complete another deal, but there was something else he had to do. and he headed to Yong's class thinking about it. Yong was angry about the day's events, but he calmed down, considering that the teacher wouldn't let it go because Yong's family gave money to the teacher every month. He wondered if others noticed his fear of Kim and that if he got a chance to fight again, he would win. His prayers seemed answered as Kim opened the classroom door, announcing there were unfinished accounts. He directed an immediate punch to Yong that threw him across the room. He advanced toward the staggering Yong, who was frozen with fear, doing nothing but watching while Kim pounded him continuously until Yong thought he was crazy. A glimmer of hope appeared when he glimpsed the teacher at the scene, but, as in the past, he walked away, leaving the scene. Kim won this battle. Minutes before that, the teacher sat wondering how to bury the incident. It seemed impossible to bury because 3 students were transferred to the hospital, and the school, wanting to prevent escalation, would need to punish Kim somehow so as not to anger the parents, and Young's parents wouldn't turn a blind eye as they were influential and wealthy, owning several residential complexes, and had not stinted on financially supporting the school. The recent renovation was mostly funded by their donations, and there was no escape from their anger if the matter was revealed. The desperate one thought about separating Yong from the incident completely, because Kim hadn't approached him before, and perhaps they could convince Yong's family to back down. The teacher got up, hurrying toward Kim carrying this idea, but his hopes were crushed when he saw Kim raining blows on Yong until he went crazy. He turned his back, retreating from the scene. If his relationship with Yong's family became known, and if the teacher's relationship was exposed with all its scandal, it would destroy his life. In class, Kim gets angry at the weakness of these people who kept looking down on him. He remembers their words in the past that the reason he was bullied was his weakness, and now, Young trembles violently even though the confrontation has just begun. Kim leaves him and sits contemplating, realizing that what he did made it nearly impossible to hide. He knows this, but he thinks that if he had chosen his enemies rationally on the path of revenge, he wouldn't have thrown a punch at Park since his return. Instead, he would have avoided all confrontations and lived a quiet life. However, the years of torment he experienced during his coma made revenge his only dream, and this is the result. Soon, there will be major chaos after many are taken to the hospital. The principal is trying to make Bright Prospects School a prestigious institution, and for this reason, he will try to punish Kim severely. But with a large number of witnesses, what happened cannot be covered up. If Kim cannot control the situation within this school, he won't be able to achieve the revenge he's drawn in his mind. This is only the beginning. Kim is brought to a meeting where the principal talks about his action without any sign of remorse, considering it a serious crime. Most teachers agree that action must be taken. Even the English teacher involved in an illicit relationship suggests expulsion, but her lover secretly stops her because he knows that expelling Kim would mean the end for both of them. He turns to Kim, who returns a sarcastic smile. The teacher tries to protect him, claiming he was the first victim of bullying and that he wanted to catch the aggressors red-handed, but couldn't bear the humiliation and exploded, confirming he was a victim before becoming an aggressor. Another teacher tries to object, but the principal doesn't care. He calls him by his full name, Kim Young-chul, announcing that Young's parents won't accept silence, and to satisfy their influence, they must expel the guilty student if he wants the school to rise. He decides to hold a review committee after a week to determine Kim's fate, asking everyone to stop the rumors until then, and suspending Kim temporarily from school. Kim gets up and leaves. Chul follows him, trying to calm him down, saying he did what he could and hopes Kim will control himself. Kim laughs in his face, amazed at how his condition has changed after he was slapping him just a few days ago. Kim tells him that he really did try his best, but he knows that he was aware from the beginning that Park was bullying students. He asks him to remember something until his graduation day. If he wants to control his tongue, he should work for his own benefit by any means, or else he will destroy his life and the English teacher's life together. He promises him at least this. Chul bows in agreement. Kim thinks about him. He wanted to get rid of him immediately, but he's not his real target. He can't waste a useful card like this before establishing his foundations in the school. Chul is just a teacher trying to survive even by despicable means. Next week is the time he's been planning for a whole decade. It will witness a completely different situation from what everyone expects. He walks, contemplating after a long absence from this alley, leading to a modest villa bearing the number 020, a house he bought for 50 million won. If it weren't for the insurance money his parents left, he would be living on a small monthly salary. He remembers the day his grandmother had to move because of hospital costs. He felt then that the world was collapsing around him, and now he's grateful to have a place to return to. He enters the house, calling for his grandmother, but doesn't find her, as she's working at this time. He recalls that everything he does is for his family, so there's no room for emotion now. He enters his room and opens a notebook. A precise plan extending 2 years will guarantee him control over the surrounding area, building a strong base and getting rid of those people's dens. But to achieve this, he must fulfill 3 conditions. First is manpower. He needs someone to help him bring down the bullies so he won't be defeated by them. Since training himself is impossible in a short time, he needs a specific person. If he wins him over, he'll gain a great advantage in the future. Second, his opponents will gather massive manpower, so he must do the same and bring to his side those who share the same goal. People are the decisive element. He's still a first-year student, and no matter how ideal his plan is, he can't execute it alone. He must lead and find the men he needs. Finally, the third condition, background, which will give him the ability to execute his plan thanks to his past experience and the knowledge and experiences he gained. Nothing stands in his way now, and the only way to solve the deliberation committee problem is to have a strong background, so he made it his top priority. In a police station, a gray-haired man was raging at the security men, roaring if they knew who he was. One of them, fed up with his shouting, ordered him to shut up and called him an old man. He became furious, declaring he was a 35-year-old unmarried man known as Go Chang Bam, the eldest son of Mung Jin Construction Company. He kicked one of the policemen violently, showing he was a dangerous person who would cause them problems if they made a mistake in dealing with him. It turned out he had assaulted someone, and the victim was sent to the hospital. Chang realized that if his enemies exploited the incident, they would turn it against him, especially after his father announced the start of the succession race between him and his brother to choose who was more capable of managing the company. Him, with only his high school diploma, or his younger brother, a graduate of a prestigious university and married to a woman of status. 3 years ago, he was able to maintain a strong position, but if his father learned what happened, his fate would be collapse. The policeman confronted him, saying the fault was on him because he hit innocent people, and this couldn't be overlooked. Chang swore they started attacking him first, but without surveillance cameras, the victim's testimony couldn't be refuted. While he wondered what to do, he noticed a boy sitting on a nearby chair who said he came to testify on his behalf. This boy was Kim. Kim presented the policeman with undeniable evidence proving that Chang was beaten first. The policeman asked how he got this recording. Kim explained he was passing by the place and witnessed the scene, and knowing there were no cameras, he requested the black box recording from a parked car and brought it himself. Kim defended Chang, saying he defended himself, and it wasn't his fault that he was strong enough to take down his opponents with one blow. Chang was amazed by Kim's intelligence and persuasiveness, and saw that the clear evidence saved him from the danger of losing his position in the succession race. The policeman apologized for the misunderstanding, confirming he should have listened to him from the beginning. Chang got up from his seat and approached the policeman, warning him that he would never forget his face in a clear, threatening tone, then left, putting his hand on Kim's shoulder, thanking him for his timely intervention, and handed him a large sum of money, which Kim accepted immediately. Chang was surprised when Kim asked him if the incident was accidental, then began telling him everything he knew about him, his origin, and the race between him and his brother over inheriting the company. Chang approached him, feeling threatened, but Kim reassured him, saying he had definitive evidence of his words' truthfulness. Kim knew the details of the story because he heard it all during his coma years. He knows its beginning and end. He asked Chang for 1 hour of his time, assuring him that what he would say wouldn't hurt him, but might save his life. In a nearby cafe, Kim showed the other half of the black box recording that he didn't give to the police, because the first part was sufficient to prove innocence. In the clip, 3 men gathered in front of a small shop half an hour before the incident. They looked like customers, but they didn't move the whole time, as if waiting for a specific person. As soon as Chang arrived, they deliberately started a fight with him, intentionally taking the blows. Kim put his cup on the table, saying it's fair to say that Chang himself must have been suspicious of the strange sequence of events since the inheritance race began. Since then, only disasters have befallen him as if they were planned. Kim explained to him that these were all his brother's plans to bring him down. Chang contemplated for a moment. He had been suspicious before, but didn't think his calm, polite brother would do that. He asked him why he was telling him this. Kim thought about Mung Jin Construction Company, which is only known in the provinces, but thanks to its solid capital and advanced technology, it was on its way to building successful residential complexes based on its president's philosophy, who ordered not to mess with people's homes. They reduced profits and raised the completion rate until the company's name became among the big ones. However, that path later witnessed the disappearance of both sons. Chang was the root of the problem. After a short period, an incident occurred that shook the foundations of Daesun Company, to the point that even Kim, who was suffering from school violence at the time, heard about it. Chang aspired to a leadership position and committed various acts. His brother later discovered some of them and felt angry, punching him with force that left the younger brother with permanent disability. The father raged at his son's conflict and announced that both were incompetent, refusing to hand the company to either of them. This caused a huge uproar, and following the news of the two brothers became material for mockery everywhere. Thanks to that, Kim was able to track his memory and locate the shop where everything began. Kim admits that the future of Mungjin Construction Company might be better if neither son took over its leadership. The elder isn't completely evil, but is a hot-tempered fool, while the younger is unscrupulous, doing whatever serves his interest without caring about values. However, what concerns him isn't right and wrong, but how useful they are to him in executing his plan. Ethical matters don't concern him. What matters is benefit. He offers Chang to help him not only get revenge on his brother, but also obtain the president's position itself. Chang tried to mock the idea, but Kim interrupted him, showing that those around him now are nothing but repeaters of empty praise words, and that a teenager like him was able to uncover the younger brother's conspiracy. So it's clear that those are nothing but his brother's eyes. He asked Chang to give him one chance to build a relationship based on trust. Chang went out to smoke, trying to organize his thoughts, while Kim contemplated the reason he chose him specifically, because he's corrupt to a moderate degree and will destroy his brother out of greed for power. Chang thought about his words and found them not far from the truth. His position as heir would be taken from him sooner or later if he remained weak, but he wondered if he could really trust the words of a 17-year-old boy he was meeting for the first time. He then remembered his father's advice: if you don't have the skill, surround yourself with those who do, then you can lead. He returned inside and asked Kim about the plan, announcing he would decide after hearing it. Elsewhere, the younger brother was receiving news of Chang's escape from trouble. He flared with anger when he learned his plan had failed, then controlled himself, convinced he still had the upper hand, and that if no new disaster occurred, the succession position would automatically go to him. However, his thoughts were interrupted when the phone rang, with the caller telling him that M had stormed Han Sung's office. At the same time, Kim explained his plan to Chang. If he wanted to win the inheritance race, he had to face reality. Between him and his brother, there's clear superiority for the younger one. He studied business administration at a prestigious university abroad and married into a family of status immediately upon his return, thus drawing the formal succession structure. Kim confirmed that everything that happened wasn't a coincidence. The younger brother prepared everything to seize the position, except he can't change the fact that Chang is the eldest son. Despite the many scandals following Chang, Kim sees he still has a chance to win. He smiled slightly and said, what if his brother, who is superior to him in everything, fell to the bottom where he stands? Then, if Chang possessed the same skill his brother has, whom would the father choose? The real competition begins when the opponents are equal, and then the priority of being the firstborn is what cannot be overturned. Kim explained that winning the succession war requires 3 elements. First is background, which he had already lost because his brother had built relationships with influential people, while he mingled with the fallen in red light district bars. Second is reputation, which is also lost, as he is known in Dyson by a shameful nickname. And third is competence, which he doesn't possess since his brother has proven practical merit in business, while he spent his days in leisure. But from now on, they will work to overturn these balances, starting with background. Kim said he cannot suddenly marry into a prestigious family or gain authority, so they must think outside the box. The way is to separate the younger brother Chung Ok from his wife, and if that happens, she being the pillar of his social standing, he will return to the starting point, just like them. In a luxurious office inside the company, Chung Ok stood apologizing to his father, Gong Jin, the chairman of the board, trying to justify what happened. His father says he contacted his daughter-in-law's father and agreed with him to scold his son for what he did, so it wouldn't lead to divorce. The father continues that the son's wife requested that the son stay away from her and said to him, let's see how you will win her back. The son says he's sorry, but the father gets angry with him and says you must control your desires, and if you follow your desires, you will bring down your family with you. You're not single like your brother. The father says he failed in raising his sons. Then he addresses the older son and says to him, you were at the police station, and it occurs to the father that the older son will say he's innocent as usual. Then we go back to the time when the older son was sitting with Kim, and the older son says to Kim, that's right, it's an ideal idea to expose all of Sean's mistakes and tell my father about them, and that he's tarnishing our reputation. And if my father is disappointed in my brother, then... Here Kim interrupts him and says, no, this is not a good idea, and he remembers that when he was in a coma, he heard a documentary about Go Myung. President Go was aware of all his son's actions, and he also knew that Go Sang-suk was trying to bring down his brother, Sang Byum, and he remembers that good behavior was not the standard for choosing the heir for Go Myung-jin, even if the heir's life was dirty. He wanted someone who would contribute to developing the company. But now will the father's heart turn to the older son, just because he started investigating his brother's corrupt behavior? Certainly not. He wants to give responsibility to a professional manager, and if the older son's appearance remains disappointing, bringing his enemy down to his level won't make him win the succession war. The older son must appear as someone who deserves the manager position. He must prove he has changed. Then Kim continues speaking to the older son. I will tell you our plan. Then we see the older son apologizing to his father for what happened, and saying he will avoid it happening again. It was wrong to stir up those problems, and from now on I will think before I act. And father, let me scold my brother instead of you. The father says there were people who tried to cause problems with you, but you made every effort to contain that. You did well. And the father puts his hand on his older son's shoulder and praises his behavior. And the father says, I'm proud of you. The younger son here seems upset and says, damn that. And he doesn't know who told his wife about his betrayal of her. But if he finds out his older brother had a hand in it, he won't spare him. The older son at that time was repeating his father's words that he's proud of him and that he did well. He finally acknowledged him, and this must never stop happening. Then we move on and see that the older son is in the car with Kim and tells him that the plan succeeded and his father is proud of him. Then he asks Kim, what should I do to become president? Kim advises him not to get overly enthusiastic, because all they did was just bring his brother back to the starting point regarding his background, and to become president, he must win the next 2 rounds. And Kim has some plans to implement, and asks him to join the company as a junior employee to learn how things are run there. The older son is surprised by Kim's words and says to him, how is that reasonable? Then he agrees with his words. Then, Kim talks to him about another matter he wants to do for him, and reminds him that he agreed with him when they were at the cafe that there are things we need each other to achieve. The older son said, what do you want? Kim asks him to become his audit committee. Then the scene changes, and we see Young's mother slapping the teacher on the face and scolding him for the excuses he's giving her about her son, and demanding he help expel Kim, who beat her son. And the teacher says to her, I will do what I can. But the teacher after that sits alone and doesn't know how to accomplish that. Then he goes to Kim and demands he apologize for what he did before the committee. But Kim reminds him that he could expose him and talk about his infidelity and the bribes he was receiving, and asks him to find a solution. Then we see Jung's mother talking to the principal, and the principal promises her he won't let her down. Meanwhile, the teacher feels anxious and doesn't know what to do, and inside the audit committee headquarters, the principal says that the one who will narrate what happened is the teacher. The teacher stands and says there is a clear reason that explains what happened. The bullies of this school, including Jung, are the ones who started harassing their classmates, and it's an insult to the class for the attacker to be treated like the victim. A little before that, the teacher saw the attendance sheet and noticed that Kim's guardian is Sang Byum, the older son of Myung-jin Construction Company, and started wondering how this person became Kim's guardian, and that his family is bigger than Jung's parents' family, and doesn't know what to do to save himself, but he must take a chance to turn the tables. Then the teacher tells the committee that for a long time he had been returning reports to Chul about repeated bullying and parent complaints, and remembered reports from Park's group about them harassing their classmates. Initially, Kim tried to reprimand them to stop, and over time their actions escalated. Days ago, Park clashed with another student named Lee, and Kim intervened to end the scene with good intentions, but Park called his friends and threatened Kim until he was forced to defend himself. He admits he overreacted, but with the information they have, if they only punish him, it will seem like adults are overlooking real bullying in schools. The matter is different for the officials. The incident resulted in 4 students being transferred to the hospital, and this is unprecedented in the school's history, and the bullying information hasn't been proven yet, and has no direct relation to the group assault issue. And regardless of Kim's justifications, violence is unacceptable. The weight of the decision burdened the principal's heart, as he had to protect the students' families and restore reassurance to them, and Young was asked what happened. Young appeared with a trembling voice, pretending, and said he happened to pass by and saw Kim beating Park without clear reason, and that he intervened later because his friend was being beaten, pointing out that Kim pulled out a lock as a weapon. Under his hands appeared a malicious smile, indicating fabricated feelings. Young's mother rose, speaking about raising her son with care and her fear for him, demanding punishment for the bully so it wouldn't happen again with other children, so other mothers and fathers agreed with her and decided that punishment should be imposed on Kim. In the hospital, Park and his companions thought judgment had already been issued against Kim because Young's mother is strict and has influence, and they discussed the possibility of demanding financial compensation for their son, reaching huge amounts. Chang tried to remind those present that Young planned all this and that there is evidence of his involvement, demanding investigation into the core of the case and facing a direct accusation to the principal of receiving bribes. The school principal was annoyed by the repeated complaints that reached Chul and his inability to resolve them due to lack of evidence or fear of losing donor support, so silence was a means to bypass problems all the time. Chang revealed before the audit committee that bullying complaints reached Chul repeatedly, but he didn't lift a finger because of the school's interests. And with Chang present as Kim's legal guardian, the balance of power inside the hall changed, and voices began demanding accountability for lenient policies. The council proceeded to present injury files and witness testimonies, and the black box recording that Kim sent appeared as evidence proving that the beginning of the fight was not from his side, and that the systematic approach toward him was repeated before the teacher's eyes. The wave of whispers among parents and influence warnings broke their silence, and demands for accountability rose. The principal insisted on the necessity of showing firmness, as he wants a good reputation for the school among donors. Chang demanded investigation into the basis of the case, reminding of the repeated bullying record against Kim, and faced accusations to the principal of receiving bribes, and explained that complaints over the years reached Chul, but he didn't act out of fear of losing donor support, so silence remained a weapon to bypass problems. At a crucial moment before the end of proceedings, Chang revealed his identity before the committee, announcing he is Kim's legal representative and the older son of Mungjin Company, describing Kim as like his little brother who doesn't cause problems, but he came because his summons to the committee required his attendance. This put all the work at stake and indicated his intention to sponsor the school in the company's name, which made parents and teachers stop their previous judgment. The school administration wondered if their opposition to Kim would cost them the opportunity to collaborate with a powerful company, but Chang shed light on the record of the bully groups and proceeded to attack the policy of turning a blind eye, emphasizing that he would not allow bullies to remain at Daeun. His words were a clear threat to those accustomed to covering things up. The conflict returned with escalating pressure from Young's father, who threatened significant social and financial consequences if anyone persisted in their stance against his son. In contrast, Chang insisted on the necessity of revealing the truth and asked the committee to rely on evidence rather than influence. The deliberations ended with a decision to temporarily suspend Kim from school and await the review committee's decision. But thanks to Chang's testimony and unexpected support, the scales tipped in Kim's favor. Loyalties shifted, and the balance returned to favor the one who had previously been accused as a victim. When the session concluded, Kim met Park at night, who thanked him for attending. Kim refused pleasantries and asked to get to the point. Park admitted his regret and considered what happened the result of childish and ignorant behavior, claiming that after the week he spent in the hospital, he realized his mistake and promised not to harm others, asking Kim to forget the matter because he sought to please the teachers to avoid expulsion. The scene ended with desperate pleading, but Kim remembered the past with pain and was not satisfied with a superficial reconciliation. His position was decisive, while attention turned to what consequences would follow. During his coma, a bullied student committed suicide from the rooftop and left a note that revealed the existence of the Golden Circle, an organization established in prestigious schools that recruits thugs and wealthy students and provides them protection in exchange for serving its purposes. A system formed that grants excellent grades to those who serve it and expels top students if necessary. It seemed that the basic circles around Kim would clear up over time, but the revelation was ultimately buried. As long as Kim wants revenge on those who pushed him to the edge, he must learn more. Kim discovered that the one who employed a group of local bullies was Shin Young-min, a third-year student at his school, an influential bully who holds the school as if it were his own, and perhaps not a full member of the circle, but in contact with them. Shin was strong enough to become a professional mixed martial arts fighter in the future, so Kim considered him the first obstacle to eliminate. When Kim saw Park again, he recovered layers of feelings accumulated over the years. No forgiveness, no repentance. He began beating him mercilessly. The next day, his classmates noticed his transformation from shy and withdrawn to violent and firm. Lee, who came to thank him, was not welcomed. Kim refused any contact with him and told Lee he didn't want to see him again. On the rooftop, Shin discussed with his partners the failure of their local plan in the face of Chang's support for Kim. The partners saw that losing such a weak target could turn into a source of profit if exploited well, so Shin ordered that the first-year student's head be brought to the rooftop. In class, Kim thought about the grand plan to defeat the Golden Circle, academic excellence, because the circle targets outstanding models. The conspiracy might be hiding among his classmates, or in the school corridors, for someone to rise to the top. He didn't have conclusive evidence yet, so he focused on preparing for the future. After school, he headed to Young-do-chul, Korea's first professional mixed martial arts fighter, and entered the gym to register his name and desire to train. Then the freshman leader, Jin Woo-shin, appeared, who displayed tremendous physical ability and a background in academy wrestling, and accepted Shin's request to hurt Kim so he wouldn't return to normal. Do-chul explained the benefits of joining the gym to Kim. Kim knew this was Do-chul from the beginning. As the former champion, he remembered his past and asked about the reason for the boy's desire to join the gym. The boy answered that his goal was to become a good enough fighter to defend himself and face the bullies at his school. Do-chul considered that the gym was not a place to encourage fighting, and that being interested in this purpose alone did not qualify him for acceptance. He suggested that he practice exercises to build his strength without becoming a violent person. Do-chul recalled the memory of the great fall in his career. The discovery of steroids in his blood after the third match in doping analysis was the reason his career ended, the public acknowledgement of the end, and that today he runs a dilapidated gym that doesn't resemble the glory days, but he remained a bet on the talent capable of turning a third-rate fighter into the best in Korea. Those memories didn't concern the boy. What occupied him was Do-chul's talent in turning an amateur into the strongest fighter, so he did everything necessary to achieve that same goal now. Do-chul wanted not to repeat the same mistake he had made before. Replacing effort with easy solutions leads to fatal decline. Do-chul refused at first, then the scene flipped when an offer of 100 million won was made. He offered to pay the amount up front and secure it in one day, so there would be no loss if the trainee withdrew later. The boy mentioned knowing the results of previous steroid use and the danger of the easy choice, and confirmed his readiness to bear the consequences no matter what. The need for a teacher of Do-chul's caliber made him more determined. Do-chul offered Kim to enter the ring with him, and if he could withstand just one round with him, he would acknowledge him and accept his offer. The test conditions were simple: 3 minutes, no ground fighting, always on their feet. If he held out, there was no objection to training him. The confrontation began. Kim's stance seemed shaky but brave. He withstood several strikes, then fell after a kick to the leg. He got up and was subjected to a barrage of punches. Do-chul thought the boy wouldn't hold out, but he was amazed when he got up again. His eyes reflected cruelty and desperation that made Do-chul realize he needed to crush him before he turned into a terrifying creature with no return. The fight continued until a strong blow landed on his kidney. Do-chul issued a warning that there was a minute and a half left, and if he didn't stand within 15 seconds, the match would end. Kim made an effort to stand, but his body refused to obey. Inside him was a long wait for this moment. Since his coma, that moment of rising had hidden in his chest. If he didn't want history to repeat itself, he had to stand. He rose slowly from the ground, convinced that if he achieved revenge, he would willingly enter even the hideout of the wicked, and that, as long as the goal was to tear apart everyone who wronged him, he would not kneel. Do-chul indicated that the blow he just delivered was a blow that a professional couldn't withstand, and wondered about Kim's life story that brought him to this degree. He warned that teaching him to fight would lead his life to decline, so it was necessary to stop him here. He suddenly stood and prepared to defend by closing the distance with powerful strikes raining down. Kim swore to endure the beating, whether his nose broke or his teeth fell out. It didn't matter to him as long as it was the price of revenge. 12 seconds remained on the clock, and Kim was still standing. Do-chul continued hitting him until the timer went off, declaring Kim's victory. Do-chul left, saying that hospitals were closed now, so he preferred not to go there, and asked him not to disclose what happened, then requested his account number to pay him what he promised. Do-chul remembered the offer from the Mixed Martial Arts Federation mediator a few days ago. He would be paid if he returned to using steroids and fought a match to excite the audience. His thinking flipped when he saw the money Kim offered, and thought that if not for that offer, he would have accepted the worse offer. Kim ate his food at home, justifying to his grandmother what happened as just a fight with bullies at school, then asked his grandmother about the savings account designated for housing. She confirmed they had been saving 100,000 won monthly for years. Kim thought about the apartment subscription program that Mungjin Company would launch this month and saw the necessity of securing the deal. He suggested borrowing from the bank or selling the apartment if payment became difficult later. Chang would be the one to put his grandmother at the top of the selection lists because he wanted to give his grandmother $1,000,000 as a gift, but she would ask me where the money came from, but if I did that, she wouldn't suspect anything. The next day, Shin congratulated Jinwoo on his deed, saying he heard that Kim had been severely beaten and that he was now close to them. Jin went and saw Kim's condition at school and understood that Kim wasn't strong if he was beaten like this, so he prepared to move soon and ordered his followers to intimidate the beginners and warn them against approaching Kim. At the gym, Do-chul advised that Kim needed to increase his fitness. A tough training plan was put in place, lasting 2 hours daily, to build endurance that would enable him to face Shin, who had trained for years, and for his greater goal of facing the Golden Circle men. Do-chul noticed great determination in Kim and promised to apply the results of his own research on how to excel without forbidden means. If Kim proved his ability, he would become strong enough to earn him prestige. After a week, a boy approached Kim in class, Siyu, and announced that he didn't accept what happened and that he didn't want to stand by someone who ignores suffering. He explained that Jinwoo threatened to kill anyone who approached Kim, but he came because they had been friends since elementary school, and if he had to throw away his life, he would carry one soul that wouldn't break the covenant of friendship. Siyu admitted in the past that he was weak when he tried to save Kim and got beaten. During Kim's coma, he came to apologize for his inability and promised that if he were given another life, he wouldn't leave him. Kim grabbed Siyu's hand and ordered him not to pretend closeness, but to do what others do, because what he's going through is not his business. Siyu left, reminding him that he wouldn't leave him alone. On the path to achieving his goal, Kim learned that completing the Golden Circle map requires confrontation in multiple arenas, building physical strength, recruiting people who share the goal, and securing social backing. He continued his training and preparation, knowing that the real confrontation was in the future, and that every small step brought him closer to the day when the curtain of accountability would fall on those who pushed him to the edge of madness. He didn't know what pain and suffering would befall him if Sue got involved in this, so the decision was decisive to cut off all relationships except his family and not drag others into his battle. As he prepared to leave, he heard that Jin Woo had grabbed Siyu and was abusing him, so he rushed out of the classroom to save his only friend. In the hallway room, Siyu met Jin Woo, who confronted him, accusing him of talking to Kim after a stern warning. Siyu stepped forward slowly, insisting on his right to talk to whomever he wanted, and calling to stop playing around and be serious, while Siyu kicked Jin's face. The latter fell on his backside, and Jin Woo's face turned pale with anger. He ordered his followers to attack, and a battle ensued, in which the group's strikes quickly weakened the skilled Siyu. Despite this, his heart remained preoccupied with Kim, who warned him, but he didn't stay away, as he didn't allow a true friend to remain alone, no matter what it cost him. Inside the small arena, Jin Woo ambushed Seo from behind while he was shocked from a powerful blow that exhausted Seo and threw him against the wall, screaming that he would make his life hell. Then the door was kicked open forcefully, and Kim entered steadily, realizing that Jin Woo must be defeated, but he was in a completely different weight class, so he had to provoke his anger a little. He showered him with sarcastic insults about his weight and his alleged delusional victories, until Jin Woo ordered his men to back off, declaring that he would beat Kim alone. He advanced and attacked him, but Kim blocked his punch and delivered successive blows before dropping him with a final strike. Kim didn't stop until he planted fear in his heart, continuing to beat him as blood flowed on the ground. In the final moments, Jin Woo grabbed him as he was getting up, begging for mercy and mentioning that Shin forced him to do it. He confessed in front of everyone and asked for forgiveness, so Kim released him, warning him not to approach Seo again, declaring that any touch would result in him following him everywhere to end his miserable life. Inside the infirmary, Kim thought that Seo should have acted like others, and that his non-intervention would have spared him what he had reached now. He warned Seo not to get involved again, because what awaits him is more violent. Seo replied that when he lost consciousness, he saw Kim coming as he himself used to do, and that he doesn't know the nature of his work, but he won't abandon his friend no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Kim replied that he's not the friendly friend from before, and that their relationship stopped at the boundaries of friendship only, and forbade him from approaching because he has no ability to face what's coming. Outside the infirmary, Shin bragged about the amount of money he makes from the Golden Circle jobs and decided to demand bigger commissions, noting that the profit artery might turn into a profession and he would become a broker no less valuable than its founders. As for Kim, he continued his way, heading toward leading his small project toward a bigger scope, not wanting to drag anyone with him into the abyss of approaching the fire. Shin's thinking thinking was suddenly interrupted when the door opened and Kim entered, revealing that Shin was indeed the intended target. Not a moment was wasted. Kim pounced directly in a smart, offensive manner, executing a kick that Shin barely managed to block with difficulty. Kim continued in a frenzied attack with no respite, and Shin was trying to understand the reason, but he had no room to speak in the face of the rush of blows. The pattern suddenly changed when Kim bent down and connected with a painful punch to the stomach. Then the incident revealed his true identity. This was the person who had been long awaited. Attempts at explanation collapsed, so Kim approached and hit a chair on Shin's head with stunning cruelty. The blow stunned him, so he immediately activated to struggle out of the siege. Kim threw the chair, then rushed with a fist, but Shin embraced the chair, simplifying the situation in his favor and turning to a counterattack. Shin seemed skilled in some tricks, so he feigned the attack to penetrate Kim's defense, but he sensed that facing Kim wasn't just a matter of physical perfection, but a test to prove something. The moment extends to a bigger breakthrough. Kim grabbed Shin's leg and pulled his balance, threw him at the nearby window, lifted him above the edge, and the scene turned into a final threat, as Kim hinted that the end would be one of two. One's life or the other's life. A group of students stormed the room and grabbed Kim while he continued to threaten to chase Shin to the end, as Shin's body trembled with glass embedded in his back. After about 30 minutes, a message echoed through the loudspeakers, calling the named individuals to appear before the principal's office. Chul attended and looked at the traces of blood scattered on the ground, puzzled about what to say to the principal to protect Kim, but the surprise was that the principal ordered him to ignore it. It had circulated in the corridors that Mongjin Company had withdrawn support from Shin, and that Chang had decided to sponsor the school with a large sum in exchange for ensuring a cover-up, as well as keeping 2 spots in the upcoming housing project. The calculation changed. Sponsorship isn't given without return, and the demand was clear. As long as Kim remained a student at the school, he must be overlooked or covered up, and the principal asked Chul to complete the task in accordance with the school's interests. Chul welcomed the idea of cooperation, and was promised priority in performance and special benefits, and this was considered an alliance that would improve the school's reputation and give the principal his standing. When the investigation resumed, the principal summoned Shin before those present, and there was much confusion among the faces. A narrative emerged stating that Kim started the assault and that Shin was just a younger boy who was attacked, and the talk continued against Kim as the aggressor. Chul recalled his notes about previous cases of repeated violence that weren't handled, and when Shin tried to shout that he almost fell from the roof and that there were witnesses, a practical response came from Chul, who whispered that witnesses always exist, but their credibility is measured by what adults choose to believe. Shin's face changed as he stared at the adults around him, seeing corruption in the offices of authority and faces ready to align with influence. The bitter truth was revealed that the decision isn't based on justice, but on the scales of influence and interest. He realized that messing with Kim was a grave mistake, so he apologized and walked away, realizing that his proximity to graduation prevented him from dragging himself into an abyss that would distance him from his future. He was forced to seek help from outside the school. In one car, there was talk about the bad situation, and how influence always decides matters, and how Mongjin Company entered the picture. Everyone who tried to harass the target was expelled, and the sponsor who put his hand on the case was kept. The broker had no choice but to complete the task himself, because the Golden Circle doesn't forgive a single mistake. He drove the vehicle, carrying enormous pressure toward the school principal, complaining that Shin was unjustly judged, but the administration denied any such action. Then they exchanged talk about the incident that sent 4 students to the hospital, and that Kim, the culprit, received a light punishment, so perhaps immunity is treated in a special way. The broker sensed the thread that there's protection for Kim and said he would inform the police about it, but the principal told him that the police have nothing to do with it. He began to understand that there are fingers extending beyond the school, and that submission to local interest and then monopoly is the reason for the silence. The truth appeared in the town's network of relationships. Locality prevents the stranger from interfering, and the decision is based on a regional spirit that protects its people. If one of them errs, it becomes difficult for the newcomer to remedy the situation. With no alternative, the broker realized that his failure means his immediate professional downfall, and that the Golden Circle's reputation is based on completing every task, no matter the cost. He contacted Shin, warning that confronting Kim isn't a solution, and suggested destroying his grades by any possible means, reminding him that the failure of one of them means accountability not just for the student, but for those who deal with him. The circle leaves no loophole unexploited. Shin closed the phone, wondering how to execute this. Then Kim appears from behind him and tells him, "Didn't I tell you to beware of what will come from behind you?" Then he struck him from behind, and he realized that Kim was behind him. The next day, colleagues talked about the defeat that befell Shin. While it seemed to others that Kim settled the confrontation without being harmed, Shin knew that the broker visited the principal, and that the ability to cover up had become clear. The loss escalated with the certainty that Mong Jin's guardianship turned Kim into an extremely difficult game. Kim's threats didn't subside, as it was clear that he wouldn't accept mere passing surveillance or mere passing expulsion. Preventing him from school wouldn't be the end of the road, but the beginning of a dream of legal accountability. Then receiving men from Mong Jin Company who wouldn't let him return to his old life. Their future is torn unless he escapes far away. Shin surrendered to fear and asked about his demands, as his confidence in his limits evaporated after he began to fear the consequences of playing with forces greater than him. Shin carried hesitation about his fate. He could stay if he lowered his grades and survived the greater pot, so he sat knocking his head on the table, confused between waiting for his grades to slip or facing harsher punishment from the golden circle that doesn't forgive. Kim entered the gym, where the coach noticed a hidden talent in him and praised it, and the intention to encourage struggle seemed to increase. The coach asked Kim to rest because rest is a very important part like training. When Kim left the gym, he was surprised by Seo's presence bearing traces of wounds, and he tells him that he's here because he has an appointment for consultation. A few days ago from now, So was wondering what happened to Kim and why he changed and became this cruel. He cried, remembering Kim's words. One of his friends came and told him that Kim defeated Chin and almost threw him from the window. He went crazy. He decided that he must not leave a friend who stood by him in times of danger. At the present time, So explains that he came to join the gym. Kim tells the coach that he heard there's a new member who will join the gym. He should reject him. Here the coach tells Kim that the matter of rejecting or accepting any player is up to him, and the coach ordered him not to overstep his boundaries with him. Here, the coach decided to give Seo a trial opportunity on the condition of enduring the hard training. In the meeting between the coach and Seo told him that he wants to defend his friend Kim, and that these wounds on his face are because of bullies, and that he must learn to fight to defend himself and his friend, and also stand beside his friend Kim. The coach tells him that the gym isn't a place dedicated to training to fight bullies. Seo begs the coach to accept him, because Kim is training here for some goal. The coach sees that he's in a bind. Seo gives an amount of money to the coach. The coach gets angry and asks him why he's doing this. Seo said, "Even if you don't accept me, I'll stay beside Kim." Here the coach orders him to leave today and come tomorrow to the gym, but he'll leave if he can't keep up with the training. Seo left and met Kim. Kim says that the coach accepted Seo, but Kim didn't welcome him to the gym. Then in the ring, training began between Kim and So, and the duo exchanged some punches and kicks. So was reminding himself that he's an athlete and that the dual confrontation alone might be different. Kim didn't know how much strength Seo could draw upon. His past in Taekwondo was full of medals, and he was called the master of specialization, but an unfair referee's decision in a confrontation with the son of the head of the Korean Taekwondo Federation ended his competitive career. So he moved away from sports, but didn't lose determination. He put him on the ground and examined his techniques, knowing that the kick-catching technique used in mixed martial arts was known to him. Kim struck him, demanding extraction and surrender. Seo recalled the times Kim saved him and rushed, trying to respond, but he made a mistake, and waves of punches continued until a mocking smile appeared on Seo's face that stopped Kim for a moment of contemplation. A mutual sense of how far their friendship could reach emerged, and Seo justified standing by a friend who had saved him so many times, mixing tears of regret with a new determination to prove that loyalty hadn't died. The coach rushed into the ring, asking to turn the violence into organized training, believing that Seo's talent in kicks and the precision of his movements, along with Kim's sharp mind in discovering opponent weaknesses, were qualified to rise to the UFL platforms if used correctly. The conversation evolved into a suggestion to quit school and focus on sports as a profession. While the coach seemed capable of extending his network to professionals, and his experience proved that the potential existed, Kim temporarily refused the idea, declaring that fighting didn't appeal to him as much as it weighed on his soul, but he acknowledged that there was a goal that required achievement. Seo's response was decisive, as he didn't regret the decision to stay by Kim's side, so Kim set the terms of a practical partnership: relentless daily training, participation in matters he could handle with the right to withdraw from desperate battles or legal issues, a monthly salary to ensure his living from Mongjin's side, and continuing his studies as an escape plan from a dark reality to a better tomorrow. Kim accepted these terms as mutual benefit, and worked on turning the opportunity into a mechanism to change Seo's future and prepare two allies capable of facing the Golden Circle. He returned home to find his younger brother busy watching his favorite team. He remembered his old nostalgia for matches, and his brother's desire to follow the championship, and determination settled in his heart to stand on his own 2 feet, for the sake of his grandmother, his brothers, and Seo, at least, and to crush anyone who stood in the way of their comfort. A message from the coach arrived later confirming that he may have overstepped when he called for going professional but was leaving the door open if he changed his mind. Then midterm exams began, and he was breathless between the need to get impressive grades to thwart the Golden Circle's plans and the temptation to expose them with evidence that might lead to their disappearance. Kim chose to complete a comprehensive plan to become an unshakable barrier to their corrupt ambitions. The preparations intensified, and long hours of studying bore fruit with complete knowledge of the correct answers. Kim remembered how the same name had stuck to the school's past during his years of being bullied, and how his memory was programmed during the coma to return to him as if time hadn't erased it. Tears fell as he realized that all the exhaustion of preparing for academic merit was a link in his gradual revenge. Kim's contemplation of revenge stopped for a brief moment after memories of exams hit him. It seemed that the desire for revenge had shaped him, and this wasn't just a desire but had become his current identity. After the exams ended, a girl from the students came to him asking why he refrained from correcting his paper. He showed no desire to explain, but he remembered her. This girl had confessed to him in the first year that she loved him, but he refused at the time so as not to burden himself with a relationship that would hinder his studies. Then she noticed the grade results and showed that he got 100 in every subject. Chul called Kim to the roof, where it was officially announced that he topped the school list. Then Kim understood that the time had come to reveal the Golden Circle's map, so he told Chul about the organization's history and goals, and explained that cover-up and silence were required. Chul was asked to prepare himself mentally for those confrontations. Meanwhile, calls echoed on the principal's phone about accusations of favoritism and his perfect grades, but the principal considered it a source of pride and an opportunity to raise the school's standing locally and strengthen the alliance with Mongjin for building. Chul knew that sponsorship from a major company wasn't given just out of charity, but for mutual interests. The instructions were clear: cover up any flaw as long as interests remained. Chul responded out of desire for benefit and promoted Kim's precedence and status within the administration, seeing it as a personal opportunity for professional advancement. On the opposite side, Shin and his companions planned a response, recruiting 30 students to clash with Kim all at once, thinking that would remove him from the scene. An attempt at provocation took place in the food court, where confrontations escalated. Kim pounced with precise strikes and brought down the troublemakers, then challenged their leader, and the opponents gathered at an abandoned location outside the teacher's site to assess their forces. The students gathered at a location to fight away from the teacher's eyes, and although some opponents demanded a one-on-one confrontation, it became clear that Kim was no longer bound by old standards of honor, but adopted harsh methods like chairs and surprise initiatives to impose his dominance, as the competition was no longer just attempts to prove muscles, but a battle over the legitimacy of survival within the school. He had to change the circulating narrative about him, from a student accused of assault to a lion protecting his interests. To achieve this, success could only come through building solid foundations in the school to turn it into his impenetrable fortress. The plan required an undeniable victory, a victory that would build a barrier of terror between him and his competitors. The decisive need for victory in a clear fight in front of everyone was necessary, because this victory would determine the fate of Chang and his gang, and those behind them. The second member, nicknamed the Devil, rushed toward Kim and threw a punch he believed hit Kim's face accurately, so he showed a smile and thought it was over, but he didn't notice that Kim was guarding his face with his hand. He rushed again and failed completely, so Kim seized the opportunity, swerved, and delivered a sweeping blow that knocked the opponent down in one strike. Jin-woo looked from above to see that his defeat wasn't mere coincidence, as Kim took down the violent devil with one strike, and everyone was warned not to approach him because he fights like a rabid dog. Seo approached from behind and patted his shoulder, then directed a light punch to his cheek, and indicated that there were old issues that had to be settled. He remembered that after Kim solved the problem of the troublemakers, Seo had offered help in the plan, but Kim clung to not dragging Seo into reckless battles. Seo insisted on participating, hinting that the group would use their numbers to defeat him. Kim replied that this wouldn't change anything and asked Seo to prove he wasn't alone. Then we see Seo delivering a blow to Jin-woo, who had insulted him and told him that Kim wasn't there to save him from him. Then Seo responded with a kick that knocked Jin-woo down, proving that his defeat could come with one blow. Outside the school, Kim confronted all of Shin's men who thought he was smart in his plan. He wanted to bring him down by numbers, but the presence of witnesses made it difficult, and if he stood firm now, his reputation would remain tarnished even after graduation, so he had to act immediately. Indeed, he ended the confrontation in front of everyone in a way that confirmed his dominance. In the classroom, Shin sat receiving news of his defeat. He was informed that 9 of their men had been defeated, so he put a plan to multiply the stories against Kim so that their accounts would be copied and a narrative established that would condemn Kim, hoping that the police and school wouldn't dare expose the network. The principal called the supervisor after calls went out about the Golden Circle and Park's relationship with it. Everyone was furious, and voices rose about the possibilities of career collapse if the matter was exposed. Chul explained that more than 10 students in the school had a relationship with the circle, warning that exposing it might bring down the entire school. Chul raised his forehead, demanding everyone not to be biased. Realizing that the decision was no longer limited to punishing one student, but related to networks with broader influence, and that continued silence would be complicity that would make the school a ground for dirty services not easily erased. Shin threatened in the meantime that he would get Kim. Then we see that Chang went to Shin's father and told him that he was expanding the company's work and might have a job opportunity with him. Shin's father asked him, "What do you want me to do?" Chang said, "Your son Shin. Make him stay away from Kim, if you want the public interest for you. Otherwise, you will lose everything. Everything you own, you will lose." Then Shin received a sudden call from his father, who asked him to stay away from harassing Kim and threatened him with serious consequences if he didn't stop. Then he received another threat from Chang, who revealed to him that his inheritance and their influence would fall if he was lenient. Chang's demand was clear: either pretend to be defeated or lose everything, as the accumulated debts could turn on his head and his family would be marked with shame. Then Shin went to Kim, and Kim understood that Shin had received the phone call. Then they started fighting. Shin faced Kim with destructive ferocity, and Kim pounced and shocked him with a slap that hit his face. He grabbed him by the hair and finished him with successive blows, then imposed only one choice: kneel and ask for forgiveness, or take the risk. Shin lost his balance, and Kim rained down on him with blows until he grabbed his arm, and Kim broke it. In the end, Shin surrendered to him, and Kim won. At the end of the battle, the principal started his calls with the supervisor, happy about the school's rising status with the first student's excellence, while Chul worked hard to prepare an alternative story to save everyone from exposure. Chul was torn between cleaning up the mess Kim left behind or collapsing with the school. So he decided to weave a story turning Shin's injury into an accident of falling on the stairs while playing with friends, with an explicit threat to anyone who dared reveal the truth that the consequences would be dire. Then Chul devised ways to cover things up using the same methods he had employed before, and confirmed that silence is the best policy for those who want to survive, and that aligning with those in power preserves positions. As for Shin, he found himself under the weight of fear, as it became clear to him that backing down or putting on an act in front of people were the two ways to survive, otherwise his actions would lead him to eternal loss. In an unknown location, the mediator received a severe beating for his failure to manage the work from the officials of the Golden Circle, and they informed him that they had to satisfy the Golden Circle's clients, reminding him that their mission was to present the violence as a passing issue that doesn't require investigation, and to maintain a system that serves their interests. He was assured that any attempt to step out of line would face a harsh reaction. He realized that messing with Kim was a grave mistake, and that he was a difficult person to reach, but someone named Jung Sang-soo threatened him. He was a branch mediator for the Golden Circle in Seoul. After a week, Shin was discharged from the hospital, and received a message from Kim demanding he reveal who hired him, otherwise the matter wouldn't stop there. He boarded the bus, drowning in regret because of another message from Tang announcing that his employment had been terminated, then returned home to find it demolished. His strength gave out, and he fell to his knees crying as his family life collapsed around him due to his wrong decision. Debts piled up on his family, and everything his father had built collapsed, and fear pressed down on him until he failed, and his father rebuked him for crossing the line with Kim, and then by mistake he stepped on a bottle and fell to the ground from the shock of it all. Then he received a message from Kim to meet him in the park. Shin met him in the park and apologized repeatedly, claiming he had no information about who hired him and that the mediator disappeared after a simple message, so he begged for forgiveness and pleaded for mercy. Kim offered him one last chance by enduring a full month of humiliation, so Shin accepted reluctantly and thought that his endurance would be the end of the ordeal. In the following days, Shin endured the insults and mockery of his classmates. Everyone was informed that Kim had given them freedom to act because they had devoted their lives to bullying, and that Kim would not interfere as long as they were the ones deciding his fate. But if no one participated, he would live peacefully until graduation. Han was one of those who received insults just because his eyes met Shin's, so he became furious and broke his head, then went out demanding an explicit confession of what Shin had done years ago. This was the beginning of a wave of harassment that brought Han to the brink of despair. Then Han went to him and poured milk on his head, and told him that Kim had given them freedom to act. For the past 3 years, Han had been receiving beatings and insults just for Shin looking at him, and Han always wished that one day would come when he could respond to Shin's insults. And in the present time, while eating, and Shin was eating his food, Han comes and insults him and tells him whether he feels ashamed of being beaten by an outcast, and the rest of the classmates look at Shin and laugh at him, and Han reminds him of when Shin used to rebuke him in the past. Then Shin gets up and leaves. Then another person comes and rebukes Shin, and Shin walks, and another student comes and trips Shin and makes him fall to the ground, and they rebuke him and remind him of what he used to do to them in the past. And Shin sees that controlling himself is a difficult matter, but Shin remembered Kim's look and decided to endure for just a month. Kim remained in class contemplating that Shin didn't know anything useful about the golden circle, so he had to go back to square one, but his determination didn't change. His goal was to destroy whoever pushed him to the edge, no matter what the cost. A thread of evidence gathered for Kim. He kept narrowing down the suspects until it seemed that the proxy holder shared his grade and possessed enough wealth to hire the golden circle. But he took his time as he had to confirm his current target first. Meanwhile, Shin didn't stop swallowing insults and beatings until he became an outcast who received no help, and he received a message from Kim offering him a new deal, and Shin told him he was willing to do anything for him. On a planned night, Shin stood in front of a small shop where Park worked, then entered the shop and beat him severely. Then after that, Park tells his friends that Shin beat him up, so his friends ask him why he did that. Then Shin appears in front of them and Park says, "I met you last night, why did you do that?" Shin said, "Kim told me to turn your lives into torture, and this is easier for me than being humiliated for a month." Then Shin beat Park and his friends in an organized manner, according to the plan. Shin beat Park and his friends severely and blamed them for the mistake from the beginning, because if they had gotten rid of Kim, things wouldn't be as they are today. Then Park surprised him from behind and stabbed him from behind, and Shin fell to the ground, and he says, "We all made mistakes and failed, but he chose which of us would taste the greatest torment." The next day, news spread among the students that Park had stabbed Shin, and there was news that Park would go to juvenile detention. Then we see Kim talking on the phone and saying that Young's family realized there was no hope, so they sold all their possessions and left the village and went to Gyeonggi. And we see that Kim is talking to Chang, and Chang tells him that their son could go to juvenile detention and that he could send him there immediately if Kim asked him to do so. But Kim tells him there's no need for that. Let him live his life quietly until he forgets who I am, until I surprise him and turn his life into torture again. Chang tells him that sometimes he scares him because of his ideas, but then Kim tells him to send the others to prison as soon as they get out of juvenile detention, because Kim doesn't want them to remain in this society for even 1 second. Chang says, "Wow, I won't think about being your enemy," and said he doesn't want to stand in his way, and tells him that he started working as a beginner inside a modest company, and how long will he have to stay. Kim tells him he's not patient. He must stay and start from scratch until he reaches success, and Kim promises him that things will start soon. Then it appears that the markets opened to a wave of crazy increases in real estate prices that evening. At a construction site, the machines began working with obvious sluggishness. The metal beams that were tied together had been insufficiently secured, so one of the beams broke loose and fell on a worker. Voices rose, asking whether an ambulance should be called immediately, but the site supervisor ordered them to drop their phone phones and restrict reporting to the superiors first to maintain workflow and minimize loss. Barriers of conscience wavered between those who demanded an ambulance and those who feared disrupting the project and its financial impact, while the injured worker was forced to face a reality of pain and uncertainty as the men gathered around him in shock between fear of loss and the urgent need for rescue. The worker was transferred to the hospital after a full 2 hours, and he wasn't sent to the nearest hospital, which was only 10 minutes away, but to a hospital affiliated with the company an entire hour away, where his son was informed, after a delayed call, that his father had caused major losses due to his negligence, but they generously wouldn't demand compensation from him and that the case would be closed. Nothing was paid for the accident, so the young son Jung-hook sat beside his father's body, crying helplessly and powerless, a day that won't be erased from his memory as long as he lives. At the work site, Chang was walking around annoyed with his monotonous work, wishing for a life of fun and drinking, but he trusted Kim after seeing how quickly he achieved revenge against every opponent, so he believed that his advice doesn't disappoint. While he was contemplating that, an explosion of metal and falling metal beams rang out, so he rushed with the workers to see that a collapse accident had injured 5 or 6 of them. His face changed and he shouted, asking if the ambulance had been notified. He was told that senior management had ordered not to report it to avoid scandal, so he grabbed the worker and shouted at him, "Does he think people's lives are a joke?" And he ordered them to call the ambulance and rescue immediately, affirming that he would bear the responsibility alone. The rescue teams finally arrived, and most of the workers came out with minor injuries in a scene described as a miracle, but the site manager in his elegant suit whispered to him that the news had spread on the internet with negative articles, and that more was inevitably coming. Chang asked what could be done, so the man answered in confusion, as he thought Chang had a plan, but the latter admitted he hadn't thought of anything except rescuing people first. His phone rang and it was his father calling, but he didn't answer. Then he called Kim, hiding from sight. In the office of Mung Jin Company, his brother Chang Ok was taking advantage of the situation to strike him in his absence, placing articles condemning their competence in front of the company president and shouting, "How dare he cause this chaos without referring back to his superiors? Isn't the first duty to protect the company's reputation?" He called the police and ambulance all together, so he attracted the attention of the press, and now everyone will ask who will bear the losses if the project loses its reputation? The father was silent for a moment, then acknowledged that he himself had indeed contacted all the government departments, because professional pride doesn't allow him to hide any accident affecting the safety of workers. However, he wondered in a heavy tone about how the family would bear the economic shame that followed that, so Chang recalled Kim's words when he warned him that the president, despite his harshness, carries a special pride in real construction. He doesn't forgive fraud in work, but he respects those who put workers' lives before profits. The man was considered one of the most skilled workers in his field, to the point that he reached the rank of mastery. But if a foolish accident related to safety occurred again, his intervention would have been inevitable. He received advice to act according to what he saw as right, so he felt awe. He saw that they should demolish the building and rebuild it from scratch, but his father warned him to be careful in his thinking. Construction costs are borne by banks, and interest increases every day, which could drown them in debt if they began rebuilding. The young man explained that his suggestion to demolish the building was because it was just one building, and the losses would be severe anyway. However, what mattered most was trust. There were many accidents caused by poor construction quality, and the reputation of construction companies was at rock bottom. If they only repaired the damaged part and continued working as usual, no one would buy, since someone had publicly announced the news and everyone now knew about it. He believed that completely rebuilding might reduce the loss and restore some credibility. He mentioned that what they should worry about wasn't the money, but the trust that had been their foundation all along and was now broken. His father was surprised by his words. He continued explaining that admitting the mistake during the construction of their first building and showing excellence in the repairs might not be the safest path economically, but it was the way to regain trust and thus establish Mongjin Company's foundation on real solidity. His brother asked if he was idealistic or just plain stupid, but their father responded that his eldest son had finally matured. He mentioned that the same incident had happened in a similar time before, when the president himself announced that some of his subordinates had hidden the incident, and he faced the public with his philosophy on construction. He expressed what angered him most: the grave error in pouring the concrete, a mistake that should never occur in the foundation of the work. He emphasized that homes are people's shelter, and safety comes before any other consideration, praising his son's wisdom that he hadn't expected, as he seemed more aware and mature. He believed that Mongjin Company wasn't just a business, but a family that valued what it built, and if his son continued on this path, he would follow in his footsteps. Days later, it turned out that one of those injured in the accident had lost both his legs and was the only one who underwent surgery. His family was confused, having heard that Young & Company wouldn't even cover medical expenses, let alone compensation. However, 3 of their representatives came to them, bowing deeply in apology for the accident. Chang called Kim and told him his father encouraged him to pursue this approach, but he didn't know how to act now, fearing he would disappoint him. Kim advised him to first address the aftermath of the accident. The affected parties were of 2 types: the new tenants who could be calmed by extending loan periods, adjusting prices, and clarifying construction procedures. These would calm down over time. The injured were the bigger problem, and he needed to provide them with everything to ease their burden until they felt proud to belong to Mongjin Company. At the end of the situation, the company representatives expressed to the grieving family that money alone wasn't enough to heal the wounds. The company representatives pledged they would do everything in their power and would cover all hospital expenses, plus an amount of 500 million won. They would also give the injured man a job in a department that needed his field expertise, in recognition of his many years of work and dedication. The family expressed surprise at this generosity and deep gratitude, while Chung simply watched silently. Later, he sat smoking and contemplating. Someone asked him what construction meant in his opinion. The person answered that it was building structures, but Chang saw it as deeper than that. He used to think the company was just a means to profit, but the accident made him realize the breadth of responsibility associated with this work, as it relates to the livelihoods of workers who support their families and the dreams of buyers who spend their life savings to buy a home. He felt he had been underestimating his position, and that the matter was more complex than he thought. He had only been seeking a simple, peaceful life. But the appearance of that boy, Kim, had changed the course of his life for the better. He realized he resembled his father in his care for those around him and his desire for them to have a decent life. His colleague praised him, confirming he had indeed changed, but someone scolding them because smoking was forbidden in the hospital showed that something of his old nature was still present. A week later, the effects of the change began to manifest in a new direction that Kim hadn't expected. A man named Young Hook appeared on the news, introducing himself as the son of a worker who became permanently disabled after an accident at Mongjin Construction Company. The Mongjin Company accident was one of those accidents that didn't receive much attention in remote villages, as long as there were no fatalities, but when an apartment building project in the capital collapsed with 5 deaths, public anger erupted. Reports followed about similar accidents hidden by employers, and discontent spread throughout the country. In the midst of this anger, Young Hook appeared on television recounting his father's tragedy. He explained that the disaster wasn't just in the accident itself, but in the way the company handled it. His father's ambulance was delayed 2 hours because the site supervisor preferred to notify his superiors first. Then he was transported to a hospital an hour away from the site instead of the nearest one, on the pretext that the company was affiliated with it to obtain financial benefits. The man and his family received none of those alleged benefits. Young Hook believed the company tried to hide the accident to continue its work without interruption, so money became more important than people, and the worker was merely a tool to be replaced when necessary. Therefore, he decided to go public, so others wouldn't meet the same fate. At the end of the interview, he mentioned he currently works at another construction site where a similar accident occurred, but the new company's response was completely different from the first company's. Meanwhile, Chang had taken over managing the construction project, waking up at dawn and heading to the site every day. The workers received him warmly and with surprise, and one offered him onion juice his wife had prepared because of its benefits. He entered the small office and wondered why he had taken on this responsibility, then prepared some hot noodles for himself and ate them contentedly. Then the same worker came to tell him that a guest from a media channel had arrived to film a report after the company's approval, so Chang asked that the guest be received and directed to the location while he took a break, but the worker said they specifically requested to meet him, which made him wonder if he had said something wrong that night at the president's mansion. The father watches the news, where they discuss Mongjin Company's decision to rebuild the building because of the accident, even if it cost them a huge loss, because most of the money was borrowed. They made a very difficult decision, and the person who played a major role in this is the man they will introduce now. Mr. Chang is the eldest son of Mongjin Company's president. They also interview the injured man's wife, who says she didn't even expect to receive payment for the hospital bill, but the company's eldest son himself came to them and apologized, so she has to feel his sincerity. She's still angry about what happened to her husband, but she's very happy that he worked for a company that valued his years of work. The president raises the TV TV volume as Chang's interview is shown. The interviewer notes the many selfless things he did and asks him why he decided to do them in the first place. Chang says it's simply what his father taught him. Since they were young, their father always told them this wasn't about money, but about the family business they must carry throughout their lives. The president receives a call from President Park congratulating him on raising his son well. The president is also amazed by his stance and notes that he must be following in his father's footsteps. They start talking about Park's daughter, and the next day, a woman calls the president to tell him Park wants Chang to go on a date with his daughter, which is very fortunate because their entire family is full of judges and prosecutors. The president says in the past they rejected them very quickly, so what changed now? The woman notes that people are requesting his son from all over the country, not just Daesan. She also says he has many families to choose from, and if he needs more, he can call her. Someone knocks on his door and a woman enters asking if he was looking for her. He wanted to tell her they no longer needed the matchmaking company and also to ask about their current situation. The woman explains they have many contracts, but the big contracts are with S Company to rebuild 3,000 homes, Gangbake's new projects, and apartments for J Chemical Industry employees. In addition, they have contact from Daejeon City, where they want to expedite the contract they made for 5,000 homes. They want to set a deadline to finish construction before the end of next year. The opportunity the president had been waiting for all this time was this jackpot. Chang is called to a meeting where his father announces him as the company's new executive director, with people around him helping him through this transition. Chang wonders if this is a dream. People who used to look at him like a garbage bag are now warmly congratulating him. His father also notes that he will participate in the project they'll do for Daejeon City. So even though it's very early for him, he'll surely learn something. Chang agrees and bows while looking forward to working with them. At school, some girls whisper about something, and a boy sits awkwardly alone in his seat. Kim receives news that Chang has become executive director and is participating in the Daejeon City project. He didn't think it would go this far, as this project was supposed to happen in the distant future. He didn't expect this change. Is it perhaps a butterfly effect? His plan was to gain some power from what happened and use that to forcibly participate in the project. But thanks to the president, that won't be necessary. And Chang's promotion will definitely be useful in the future. But the important thing is, he didn't expect all this, so he must calculate the variables more carefully next time. There must not be a single mistake in his plan. He suddenly spots Chang's car and wonders what he's doing here since he didn't mention he'd come to school. He meets with the principal who notes he was very inspired by him when he heard what he did on the news, and it seems he's become the face of Daejeon. Chang says he's here to thank them for being so nice to Kim so far. This is basic equivalent exchange. He'll give them a small gift. They want to build a new sports club with the city's help and a modern swimming pool to go with it. The principal thinks this will push them toward becoming a prestigious school. They'll do their best not to let him down, and if he trusts them, this school will support Kim more. Jong says he will do it, but also asks him to summon Professor Chul. Chul finally arrives at the director's office, and Jong notices that he really likes people of his nature in this world where struggling to live and eat well is natural, so it's normal for one to work for the rich, isn't it? He's heard the story of what he did to Shin, how he punished him, so blatantly that rumors about his bribery spread like wildfire. However, that shouldn't be considered a problem. People talk and talk, but he will continue to win at this prestigious school, and his hands are full of beautiful gifts. He will become a proud and generous head of household. This will pass within 3 years at most. Won't that be a bigger reward? Chul agrees wholeheartedly, while still sweating a bit because he's nervous, and Chul tells him that he's heard from those around him that he often goes to Miracle, that nightclub full of beautiful girls. Well, he's put in a good word for him there, so he should bring his most trusted buddies there today and enjoy their time without worrying about money. Additionally, he's also packed him a sealed box of vitamins, so he shouldn't forget to take them on his way back. At least, Chul is confused by what he just said, but Jong clarifies that it's about money, so he should make sure to engrave all this in his smart head. The person he's dealing with now isn't just a son with a little money, but the heir to the most powerful construction company, Mangjin Construction, which has wealth and power in this city. Later, after finishing all this, Jong goes to the rooftop with Kim and thanks him, while Kim acts indifferent about it. Jong is amazed that he accepted this thanks so simply without asking what he's being thanked for, but Kim notes that it's quite obvious to a discerning mind, as he must be grateful because of his response to the construction incident. Jong says he's right, and by that, he fully acknowledges him and his intelligence. To be honest, bringing down Chongo last time could have been done by anyone just by looking into his private life a little. However, what he did this time wasn't simple, as he accurately identified his father's tendencies, and also predicted the benefits that would come from the rebuilding option. He's become the actual executive director thanks to his efforts, and will eventually become the president. He hopes he doesn't know what kind of future he's trying to achieve, but this means he needs so much power that he's trying to make someone like him take the position of president. He will accept it gratefully, and will do his best to maintain it. And with both of them in their positions, they should be unstoppable. Kim replies, "Sure," making Jong say he's really dull for someone with such intelligence. Additionally, if he needs anything, he should tell him. This makes Kim wonder about what exactly, and Jong clarifies that at this point he's very willing to do anything for him, at any time, whatever it is. Kim notes that if that's the case, how much cash can he spend on him? Shortly after, during closing hours of study time, Chul enters Kim's class and announces he has very good news to share. The school has decided to establish a scholarship system, this time with the prestigious Young Jin Construction Company, the most generous sponsor. The scholarship value is a full 10 million won, and there's no limit to the number of people selected, but naturally, they won't give it to just anyone. Every student is surprised by this amount, and Chu clarifies that scholarship students will be selected based on their academic performance and those who have a very promising future. The first scholarship student chosen by Mong Jin Company itself is none other than their most diligent classmate, Kim. Classmates aren't surprised by this. This guy is friends with one of Young Jin's heirs and under their guardianship, so this must all just be a show. But even so, he ranks first academically in the entire school. Chul notes that in addition, Seo from Class 8 was also selected for this scholarship for his promising future in the ring. However, for those who weren't selected, they shouldn't feel discouraged and should focus hard on their academic choices. If they do, they might also get a chance to receive this generous scholarship. As they head home, 3 students talk about how obvious the scholarships are. They don't count Kim in that because he's class president, actually ranked highest academically for 2 full semesters, so he's beside the point. But Seo, nothing but the taekwondo he practiced a few years ago, but that doesn't count. The tall student notes that this whole situation is completely strange, and the short blue-haired student says, it's not just that what kind of promising future does Seo have to justify that scholarship. He bets he only got it because he's Kim's friend, and they could have done all this secretly, so why the show in the first place? Additionally, why does Kim get so much support from Young Jin Construction, and therefore from the entire school? Is he the president's illegitimate son or something? One of them denies this, and the tall student notes that if that were the case, they would have taken much better care of him from the beginning. In fact, the blue-haired student keeps chattering without shutting his mouth for more than 30 seconds, but at that moment he sees something that makes him want to go back. This thing, or rather this person, is Kim, who's now asking him to come closer. The blue-haired student thinks he must have been crazy to talk about Kim in such a bad way. He's a psycho, something that has power and deserves the title of crazy lunatic. And now for sure, he's in trouble. This guy will probably end his life here and now. Kim tells him to raise his head and stand tall, at least once in his life. You're Chu Jin Jin, aren't you? The chatterbox in high school? A fitting name for him. Jin confirms that he is exactly that, and Kim clarifies that there's no reason to be this scared, because he doesn't really care about people who talk behind his back, as that's probably already happened several times. He actually likes him. His chatty nature is useful, and if it's true that he's really close to almost every student in this school, he'd like to ask a favor from him. Chai Jin asks what he needs. He'll give him anything he wants, while deep down he wonders if he'll get out of this safely. Kim tells him that the scholarships were indeed chosen unfairly. Seo and he are enough proof of that, however. He may have also heard about this, but there's no limit to the beneficiaries of this scholarship. Jin wonders what he's trying to say, and Kim simply clarifies that it means he can also get the same scholarship. All he has to do is spread rumors throughout the entire school, as he's done before, so everyone knows that Mongjin Construction scholarships are completely unfair. However, he'll add a little flavor to that rumor to make it exciting. The next day, a somewhat strange rumor spread at Chenil High School. Of course, this was from Jin, who explained to everyone he met that the reason Mongjin Construction created the scholarship system is to officially take care of students who are nice to Kim. They should think about it. That's exactly why Seo, the only person who talked to Kim when he was being bullied, got the scholarship. He spreads this rumor, noting that if they treat Kim well, no matter how many of them there are, he'll also take good care of them. In his own way, he also tells them that he heard from somewhere that he changed his mind because of Park and his gang, and they say they're planning to eliminate all the bad guys from day regression starting with this school. Everyone was skeptical. One even told him he reads too much manga, but they didn't let it pass and kept it in their minds. Song Hyo hears about this too, and thinks that if he does good with Kim, he'll also be able to get the scholarship, and if he needs people to fight for him, he's confident he can do it well, because he's not weak, even if he lost to him once. Later, Ha pulls Jin to a stairwell and asks him if the rumors are really true. Jin explains that Kim plans to make this school his own kingdom, and based on the power he himself created, he plans to completely eliminate the surrounding schools and their prominent figures. If there's someone who shows enough power and most importantly loyalty throughout this process, he's sure they'll be generously rewarded, because that scholarship is just a glimpse of what's coming. Sango thinks that even compared to the money he got when he tried to bully him, it's not a small amount. Even if they fight once, he might take him into consideration, but he just has to try. Eventually, he stops Kim as he's leaving school and begs him to stay because he has something to talk about. Kim tells him to follow him, which surprises him greatly because he didn't think it would be this simple. When they stop, Sango immediately apologizes for what he did in the past because it was done without ill will. Kim stops him from talking because he understands, so he should get to the point. Sango clarifies that he heard rumors at school about how he's eliminating the other surrounding schools, and he naturally wants to join. He also realizes that they were fighting to the death not long ago, and now he's bowing his head. He knows it's shameful. Honestly, he's only in it for the money, and if he needs a good listener who's strong, he should think about him because he's confident he'll never let Kim down. Kim says he heard from other kids at school that he's the one who reinforced Shin's plans. Is that true in any way? Sango thinks he shouldn't lie and reveals that it's true. He planned for it. Kim finds that very interesting and notes that he's willing to accept him, but only if he passes the test he'll give him. Shortly after, a few third-year and first-year students are summoned to a place by Sango, with the third-year students being particularly angry at him for doing this. Eventually, he arrives with a face full of bruises. He explains that what he's about to say will be said only once, so they should listen very carefully. From today onward, he's decided to follow Kim completely, and this brings him to this. Those who don't want to follow him should raise their hands now because he'll give them a very bad death. Sango has this face because Kim beat him hard earlier and noted that he needs a good dog, a trained dog that obeys well. If he orders him to hit, he hits, and if he orders him to bark, he barks. Someone who will always follow his orders no matter what. Does he think he deserves this position? A few hours ago, Sango regretted being beaten like this, but the money is really good, truly worth the beating. Kim told him that now that he's his most obedient dog, he'll be selected for the scholarship, and if he stays loyal, he'll get lots of rewards. Also, he should never try to cross him because the moment he tries to do anything, he'll tear him into small pieces and he'll never be found again. Sango thinks it's great that he can earn this much money, so even if he gets beaten like this, he just has to keep rowing forward because the water is coming. He just has to go with the flow. Then he got up and contacted the third-year students because he wanted to tell them something. He started brutally beating one of them and pointed out that he only tolerated their nonsense because of that monster Shin, but now that he's gone, they are nothing. They're as useless as the dirt under his feet. The others don't even dare lift a finger because they're so scared of him. Shango grabs the head of the person he beat and tells him to remember that he doesn't do complicated things, and he's also too stupid to get out of situations with words. From now on, they will serve Kim as if he's a king, and from now on, they will also follow his every order. Everything he asks them to do, they do, without a single objection. They must never think of betraying their most generous king, because when they do, he'll break every bone in their bodies until nothing remains. Additionally, the rumors about scholarships being given to those who treat him nicely are true, so they should support him with everything they have because they'll get lots of rewards. The next day, Jinwoo and another student talk about Shango and how ridiculous it is that he bowed to Kim so easily. There's no way to get that much money just by following his orders. This proves wrong. However, when they check why so many students are gathering in one place, they see for themselves that Shango got the scholarship, and so did Jijin. Jinwoo thinks that all this is true now because the facts are in front of him. Regardless of Shango, what did Jijin do to get the scholarship? Later, he goes to ask him, and Jin explains that he simply did what was asked of him, and in that regard, he needs to behave better too because he wouldn't want to end up like Shin, would he? Jinwoo looks worried about all this information, and then Kim arrives accompanied by Seo. Everyone makes way because the dynamic in this school has changed. No one at Chanil High School dared confront Kim, and this means moving to the next procedure. The employee at the Golden Circle who was assigned to the school is being harshly scolded while driving a car, and the person speaking on the phone is particularly obsessed with Kim, who turned the school upside down. All this because he couldn't do his job because he's scum. The employee apologizes for it, but the man doesn't stop scolding him because he paid them a lot of money and entrusted them with his son, but now he's wandering around making him feel sick. If this continues, he'll tell the Golden Circle members everything. The employee urges him to calm down because he'll finish all this before even the end of November. He promises that Kim will eventually write a letter to drop out. With that, the call ends, and the employee asks Choi Jun, another fighter from the Golden Circle, if he's ready for this mission. He notices that he is, but he needs to remember that he promised him a reward for completing this task. Eventually, they arrive at the school and the employee puts all his hopes in that student, as this is the only thing he can really do. He goes to meet the principal, who explains that they usually don't accept transfer students this late in the year, but since this was at the request of the sole education supervisor, they have no choice. He also asks him how he knows the supervisor, and Taejun mentions he's just a friend of his father's. The principal finds this strange, because this whole procedure is clearly illegal, but if he raises this issue, the supervisor will face a lot of trouble. So why did they transfer this kid here despite all these risks? Could he be one of those Golden Circle members? Even if that's the case, he won't allow him to wander around and do as he pleases. He tells him he'll clarify something important now. Chanil High School is the finest school in all of Daewon, so he shouldn't expect any special treatment, even if his father is a friend of the supervisor. Taejun says he understands and asks which class he's been assigned to. Eventually, he enters the classroom and introduces himself, but then he notices Jin Woo, and it seems they know each other. 6 months ago, Taejun was famous in the Shandong area, so he joined the Golden Circle thinking he might need them in future jobs. He also spent time and networked extensively with different students. He remembers that this Jin Woo character was somewhat useless. During lunch break, they go out to smoke, and Taejun asks him about this place, and if he didn't previously say he was in control here, Jinwoo explains that he's nothing in this place, and this is just a regular school anyway, with a principal obsessed with status. However, he'd better watch out for a certain person, named Kim, someone who has strong connections and is basically the boss around these parts. Taejun finds it funny that this bastard thinks he's someone important, but he'll be useful for his plans in the future, so he won't get rid of him yet. With that, they enter the classroom, and he wonders what to do. The original plan was to stay in Daesun for 6 months and crush Kim and his entire little system. This job brought him a lot of money with more on the way, so he had no reason to refuse it, right? He just needs to pick the right battles and bring Kim down the food chain, as he's done many times before. For Taejun, it was natural to feel confident because he held a strong position in the Golden Circle. S-class are those who are untouchable, who can't be messed with. A-class are the top 0.1%, and B-class are the best in the nation. Taejun was easily ranked as B-class in the Golden Circle hierarchy. He thinks he can easily solve this school's problem of supporting Kim by using his influence with the supervisor, and this would free him up to pursue Kim. After giving him a brutal beating, he'll manipulate the second and third year students to bully him too, and thus the mission will be perfectly accomplished. He goes to Jin Woo and asks him to show him the other classes. Jin Woo does so, and eventually they arrive at Kim's class and find him sitting there alone and weak. Taejun immediately scolds him for looking at him in a strange way, and Kim notes that he's clearly overreacting because he didn't even look at him. Taejun continues playing the tough guy, pointing out that he wants to pick a fight with him by the way he reacted. But Kim smiles and asks him, will he be able to handle what he just did? Then, Jin Woo delivers a strong punch that knocks him to the ground. However, he immediately falls to his knees and apologizes to Kim, saying he didn't bring him here to cause trouble, so he should forgive him because he had nothing to do with this. Taejun is extremely surprised by Jin Woo's attitude. This isn't the same man he knew before. He's been completely tamed. With Taejun here, Jin Woo was actually in a very good mood. He finally had a friend after all this time, someone who really acknowledged him when he was at the top, so he really wanted to be on good terms with him. But the moment Taejun messed with Kim, one brilliant idea crossed Jin Woo's mind, that he's completely finished if he doesn't do something. Then, he punched Taejun away with great force and begged Kim for mercy. A week ago, after Shango's statement that he would only follow Kim from now on, the atmosphere of Kinil High School completely changed as the emergence of a new ruler, a new master, took over everyone's thoughts. Naturally, Shango doesn't allow a single word of disobedience to pass, and those who try are severely punished. One might think other students hate these changes in the hierarchy, but they actually welcome them with open arms. Originally, when the school was under Shin's control, bullying and violence were daily routines for those who weren't strong enough. But now Shango was chosen as a scholarship student, and he transformed into a loyal guard dog who brought down punishment on bullies who dared harass the weak in his presence. Thus, because of all these changes, and other students not doing anything about it, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to, school violence completely disappeared from this prestigious school. This was the time of the peaceful king who ruled gently. When Taejun messed with the master who brought them these times, naturally, this was a problem. That's why Jinwoo is begging until now. Taejun looks at this pathetic sight of the man and asks him, "What are you doing? Did he lose his damn mind just because he treated him as a friend once?" Jinwoo asks what friend he's talking about. Just because he decided to act close to him, does he get permission to stab him in the back like this? Kim smiles as they argue, and Jinwoo advances to attack. If he's a lowly transfer student, he should shut his damn mouth. How dare he attack Kim like this? Taejun hits him with his right hand and asks, "Who do you think you are to dare try something like this?" He hits him with an uppercut and shouts that he's Choi Taejun. He crushed an entire wrestling club alone and was scouted to join the Golden Circle at the age of 17. This is exactly why he's a B-rank hired fighter. He sends Jinwoo to the ground and notes that this is what he deserves for talking too much. A knockout in 3 punches and completely clean. Taejun also notices that Kim was laughing the whole time and asks him if he's enjoying himself. Kim mentions that this situation was very funny, so he really couldn't help but laugh. Taejun approaches him and says if he's really that arrogant, he'll die today. He also thinks he doesn't care about the plan anymore. He'll beat this clown half to death and think about the consequences later. After that, he tells Kim to be ready next time because he won't even know what hit him until it's too late. Meanwhile, in class, he's getting angrier that bastard Kim is going to die when the next break starts. And where's that Jinwoo? Did he go to the school clinic like the coward he is? Taejun notices everyone is looking at him, but he dismisses it as overthinking. The teacher tells them they'll be training in groups of 4 today, so they need to go ahead and form them. The students do so, and Taejun notices everyone is excluding him. The teacher asks one of the students to let him join their group since they only have 3, but the student keeps refusing to let him in, and the other students slowly start refusing him too. Taejun looks at this and wonders, why are they just scared? When class ends, Taejun stops the student who refused him first and demands he come here now. The student tries to ignore him, which really pisses off Taejun because this guy is clearly obsessed, and Taejun needs to destroy him so everyone understands who they're messing with. He gets up and demands he come here now, but this time, much more violently. Then Changjo arrives and asks where the transfer student is, who immediately stands up and asks what the hell is going on. Changjo asks if he's the crazy one who dared to pick a fight with Kim, which makes Taejun even angrier. Kim this, Kim that, are they all insane? It's his first day here, so they should all relax a bit. Changjo tells him, that makes perfect sense, this is Kill's school, and nobody touches Kim at this school. Is that clear? Taejun thinks that if this bastard has so many people around him, he'll need to change his strategy a lot. He asks Youngjo if he's Kim's loyal pet, which pisses him off enough for Taejun to get a chance to jump from his seat and hit Changjo with everything he's got. Changjo strikes back, but Taejun blocks his attack and pushes him away. The angrier Changjo charges like a raging bull, but with his experience, Taejun hits him with a massive uppercut, one that should have knocked him out instantly, but he's somehow still standing even though he's completely unconscious. Taejun thinks he messed up the attack a bit, but if that's the case, he'll keep hitting him. He grabs his hair and slams him on the table with tremendous force and throws him to the ground, noting that this bull has had his horns cut. The people who were with Changjo are very scared of Taejun now, but without much else to do, they all attack him at once, which proves to be a mistake as Taejun quickly deals with them in just a few strikes. One of them tries to hit him from behind, but Taejun immediately notices and looks at the person with an evil expression. He immediately deals with him and moves on to the last one, seeming to enjoy the final blows he delivers to the poor boy. Other students come and also want to attack, which Taejun notices. He finds it very annoying that he has to hit so many, but surely they should all come at once to be less annoying. Changjo slowly gets up and notices it's not over yet. Taejun tells him to back off for his own good because he's barely standing on his feet. He should sit like the loyal dog he is. Changjo wonders if this is true. A week ago, On the day he turned the third-year class upside down, Changjo received a text message and some money from Changbum, who congratulated him on the good work he's doing, and this is just a gift, some pocket money. The question is, why does Chang or his relationship with Kim have anything to do with him? Chang is just someone who will literally do anything for Kim, so what if the Golden Circle Killer came out? Then the money wouldn't stop at 100 or 200. Even if he somehow fails in his mission, he'll still throw him leftovers, which for him is a lot. He rallies the other students. This young man is more of a monster than Shin and any of his followers combined, so they might not even win if they attack him. But if they choose to run away like cowards, what will Kim think of them? He thinks the incident with Shin and Park's gang taught him something very important. He got 500 for the brawl, 1,000 from the scholarship, and 100 just for some pocket money, a total of 1,600 inches just a few days. Money is king, and he won't miss this opportunity. He shouts at everyone to attack and stomp this dog like the dog he is. Eventually, word spread that Changjo and other students attacked Taejun all at once, yet he took them down alone. From his first day at this prestigious school, Taejun was already fed up with the current situation, because it's not easy for some high school students to fight a losing battle like this. But Changjo and the other students rush in like crazy. He thinks if their numbers increase, it will be a problem, but this situation is still much worse than he imagined. Even if he calls the broker for some help, it will be very difficult to isolate Kim. This bastard has turned this school into his own empire, so there's only one way out of this, and that's a direct attack. If he breaks one of his arms now, he'll at least have something to report. He bumps into someone and starts cursing at him for being so stupid. Unfortunately for him, this person was Cheol, who is now very angry with him. About 10 minutes ago, Jin Woo went to Cheol and informed him that the transfer student is targeting Kim with malicious intent. Cheol thinks that if that's the case, Taejun transferred to this school with the intention of hurting Kim, which seems like a cowardly move. They just transferred him to deal with Kim, like the bastards they are. He asks if Jin Woo said anything specifically, and notices he asked him how he'd like to deal with the transfer student, and he just said to use his own judgment. In this case, Cheol thinks that if Kim said that, he's neither inciting nor stopping him, but it feels like he's saying not to let this slide at all. But this is an opportunity to prove he's worth something, and more importantly, an opportunity to solidify this relationship completely. He gets up from his seat and asks where that annoying transfer student is. When he catches him, he drags him to the teacher's room by his ear, and when they get there, he slaps him hard. Taejun asks why the hell he's putting his hands on him, and Cheol warns him that's a very bad tone to use with a teacher. Taejun also warns him that he shouldn't be too harsh with students, because he won't last long at this school if he is. Should he just do it? Should he get him expelled with just one phone call? Cheol notices he doesn't seem to understand the situation he's in at all. On the first day of his transfer to this prestigious school, he beat up his friend so badly he needed to go to the hospital because he lost consciousness from excessive bleeding. Additionally, the worst part is that he caused a giant fight in the 5th class. He heard from his trusted students that he beat up seniors and threatened the entire class with violence. How dare he ask such stupid questions? Why is he hitting him for all this? He pinches his ear again and says he's causing problems wherever he goes on his first day. Isn't he ashamed of this? How dare he threaten his teacher who cares about his safety? If he doesn't believe him, he should try whining to his father or friends and see what happens. Taejun thinks this guy knows the education. Supervisor supports him, but still acts like this. What a lunatic. Cheol continues. Did he really think he could cause him trouble and ruin his life? He slaps him again and demands he stop the nonsense. He's not the first and won't be the last reckless kid he's dealt with. No one will believe him anyway, even if he tells someone. What will he talk about anyway? That his teacher slapped him? What a joke. No one in this entire hall will ever step forward to testify that he slapped him. He grabs him by the ear again and tells him the evidence, proof that he slapped him, doesn't and won't exist. And so, the slapping session begins. Jin Woo hit him here. Changjo's blow landed here, and this last slap is for the other kids he hit. He should remember this is only happening because he decided to be a little evil and fight on the first day. Without much after that, Taejun calls his broker and tells him that all the people at this school are crazy. He just got slapped in the teacher's room. They're acting crazy and protecting that bastard Kim with their lives. How can he deal with something like this? The broker notices this is indeed dangerous and thinks that if he fails in a rural mission like this, his position within the organization will crumble to dust. He can't afford to lose on this. Not at all. He tells Taejun he's in Seoul now, so he needs to be patient and careful because he'll handle it as soon as possible. In Seoul, the broker meets with the supervisor and explains the situation to him. They even used his name, but the teachers aren't doing anything about it. so he asks him to pressure the administration there. Education Supervisor Moon Chang-ho points out how rude these people are and says yes, he'll contact them as soon as possible. The Golden Circle included a group called the Golden Line, formed only from relationships. For those who held onto this line, they weren't just employed, but now became part of the network, pushing and pulling each other in a very symbiotic relationship. Moon Chang-ho was one of many who benefited greatly from this Golden Line. Before the redevelopment of the Jungno area began, he bought thousands of meters of land and made a tenfold profit because of it, and the broker in all this was Jung Chun-woo. After that, Chang-ho calls the Daejeon representative, and they talk about how the school seems to be having some problems with students hitting each other and teachers doing nothing. Chang-ho points out he's just concerned about the transparency of Korean education that might be in a bad position because of situations like this. Can he just handle the problem at hand? The representative doesn't back down and asks why he's dealing with Daejeon affairs when he's in Seoul. This makes the supervisor very angry, but he composes himself and notes that they're all comrades leading children to a better future through education. So should he feel inadequate to deal with Daejeon's problems? The representative says that's exactly what he should do, which pushes Chang-ho to the limit, and he asks how he dares say such things. He calms down and notes that if he wants to play it this way, he knows about other wrong practices going on in their small town, so he should be careful with his words from now on. The representative silences Chang-ho and then responds with 2 words, Golden Circle. Does he really think they didn't know? How ridiculous. But he has another question for him. Is he sure he can handle a dirty fight like this? He can assure him he won't fall alone in this, regardless of the situation. People like him think they're in the countryside because they couldn't reach Seoul, but in reality, people like him are simply here because they were born and raised in this place. People like him don't need support from people like him. Once they're removed from the supervisor position, it's over, and they have to live the rest of their lives without power. So he should know his limits, because biting each other like this won't solve anything. After that, they end the call, and the Daejeon director thanks the representative for letting him proceed with this, who points out that Chang-ho won't be able to do anything publicly. But behind the scenes, the game is open to everyone. But is he sure about that? The Golden Circle isn't an easy opponent, and if people investigate Daejeon's corruption, neither of them will be able to ignore it. Daewon says he knows, but he has someone helping him, someone far more important than that supervisor. This would be Mangjin Construction Company, which invests a fortune in their school, and Chairman Chang, the next president, is the one backing them. The actor notes that if their corruption is exposed, it's over, but Daewon points out that he doesn't mind not being the supervisor if it means his school will prosper. Everything he does is ultimately for his love of the school. Besides, the kid backing them all along is an extremely smart person. Taejun receives a call from the broker who notes they couldn't do anything, so he needs to be careful and pick his battles. Taejun asks what if he gets fired, but the broker assures him that won't happen because they still have some power. Taejun now feels stuck. If he gives up the job, he'll lose his position in the Golden Circle, but the situation is too complicated for him to do anything. He needs to keep attacking Kim, but with so many people in front of him, that seems impossible. However, if he actually succeeds, he'll get more support from the Golden Circle. After that day, Taejun, who dared to disturb the peace of this school, became an outcast. He wasn't invited to any outdoor activities, and people were whispering about him, which he really hated, but he couldn't do anything about it. After having enough, he sends a message to his group to gather everyone from Seoul, and they'll be here, and they'll tear Kim apart. Does he really think a silly rural school will stop him? A few days later, at lunchtime, Taejun isn't enjoying his meal, but he wonders if the food is really bad or if it's because he's eating alone. The group members he sent the message to reply, and it seems they're all ready to come and mess with Kim. At that moment, Kim sits on the seat next to him and notes that the food here doesn't seem to be to his taste, judging by his facial expressions. Taejun grips his phone tightly and wonders if he should just kill this bastard here and now, but he stops himself because messing with him now would only cause problems. It's okay anyway, the guys will arrive soon. The only thing he needs to do is wait for the right time. Kim asks, why this sudden aggression? Are things perhaps not going the way he'd prefer? From what he's heard, the educational supervisor made a good offer, but it didn't last long. Taejun suggests he shouldn't fool himself like this. Even if he were the king here, if they met outside school face to face, he would have been dealt with very easily. Suddenly, Kim interrupts him and asks why he's acting this way if that's the case. A hand appears behind Taejun, and a student appears accompanied by Chang-ho. Kim calmly asks him what makes him think he can really hold out here. Why is he acting like this in someone else's territory without an ounce of fear? They take Taejun outside where Jinwoo and Shangho grab him. He's still resisting fiercely and shouting, demanding to be released. As soon as they make him kneel, he starts cursing Kim and tells him to stop hiding like a coward and come out himself, or is he shy about his abilities? Kim suddenly says he admits it because he's seen everything. In the past days, his true strength has been revealed, so he'll admit he's a mercenary fighter and B grade. That means he's very strong, right? Maybe if he were closer to him in level there would be a fight, but now that's impossible, so they need to balance things out, right? Taejun asks what he means, then Kim orders everyone to crush him, and so the students start kicking him continuously and calling him bad names. Jin Woo delivers his blow, which was much stronger than the others, and without letting him rest, comes Shang-ho, who delivers an even stronger kick. Even the strong Taejun had no real way out of this. They physically overpowered him, and this became a one-sided beating. Taejun thinks he was just having his meal. Who would have thought they'd gang up on him like this? However, maybe he can escape if he can somehow take down just one of them. Then Kim grabs his arm and puts it in a lock, saying, "Even if you could face me with one arm, don't you think so too?" Then Kim starts pulling and then breaks his arm and smiles as he sees Taejun in pain and screaming. Taejun gasps loudly and trembles as he feels his arm is broken, and Kim tells Shang-ho to make this rat stand up. He does so, and Kim grabs him by his hair, explaining that he now has only two choices. The first is to continue his work in the Golden Circle, as he always did, but if he chooses that, there will be consequences, as he'll break his left arm now, and without his arms every day, at this school will feel like eternal hell for him. The second option, which doesn't involve any of this pain, is for him to obey him completely, and he needs to report to the Golden Circle that the mission was successful, then become his loyal spy. He'll basically use him to find out the identity of the person who hired him. So, what will he choose? Taejun asks if he's really asking him to betray them like this, but he should know that the Golden Circle isn't a silly joke, and never has been. Kim got his answer after this, and offers Shang-ho a deal he can't refuse. He offers him 100 million won, and the only thing he needs to do is stab this dog. If he doesn't want to, that's really fine, because he can always ask the others. Besides, he's not asking him to kill him, as he'll call the ambulance. All he has to do is stab him, so there are side effects, but nothing directly life-threatening. These words, which went beyond what he originally asked of them, silenced all the dogs he owned, including Shang-ho. Kim tries to convince them, asking how long they think they'll need to save 100 million won after graduating. Even if they save 1 million won every month, it'll take 8 or maybe 9 years. However, all these little pups were the ones who misunderstood their relationship with Kim as a normal one, so they were wrong. Kim is still trying to convince them. He'll give them this money now. They can earn a lot of cash in just a few seconds without much effort. They didn't know that the real Kim is a demon built from 10 years of resentment and comes from a disabled person who would do everything and anything for revenge. At that moment, when they finally realized, Taejun also lost all will to fight. Kim notes that he promises they'll testify to the police, that he didn't stab him intentionally, and that it was just an innocent joke. No one will believe him anyway, because this is Daesan. A few days ago, Kim met with Cheol, who handed him a copy of Taejun's academic record, and as he suggested, this little rat was sent by the Golden Circle. Kim slowly pulled it from the envelope, thinking they must have sent a B-class fighter, and if he does his best, he can probably win in a fight, but that won't be enough to stop him, considering that the Golden Circle is very bold in its actions, as they sent a mercenary fighter clearly backed by the education supervisor, but it also shows they were optimistic they'd succeed easily. However, what would happen if Taejun failed? They'll surely know the situation needs more attention, and if he faces any A or S-class fighters now, he can't know if his plan will work from the various relationships he's built, including Seo, to the butterfly effect caused by Jung Yu. As he experienced this world's unpredictability, Kim finally realized his plans were just empty frameworks, waiting for the complete picture. His carefully thought-out plan isn't perfect, because there are too many variables, and he can't risk it that easily. What he needs to do is control the situation as best he can, and prepare well for those variables. The only way he can do that now is to calculate his move more and be careful. In this world of revenge, something like friendship isn't welcome or profitable. Shang-ho declares he'll do it because Kim was always good to him and always rewarded him after everything, and so he tells the other students to hold Taejun. Shang-ho takes the knife from Kim and accepts his deal completely. As he draws the knife, Taejun tries to convince him, but Shang-ho seems determined to get the money, so he quickly aims at his stomach. Seconds before the knife approaches his stomach, Taejun chooses the second option and promises to become a loyal dog. Kim tells Shang-ho to stop because he'll make sure to reward him properly for his conviction, but he'll leave this matter for now. Shang-ho accepts, and Taejun thinks that after he gets out of here, he'll immediately call the broker and solve this matter, as he should have done all this time. Before he can think more, Kim tells him his exact address, and also that he has his parents and one sister. Did he understand that correctly? Taejun asks how he did that, but Kim ignores him and clarifies that he doesn't really care about his family, much less than he might think. However, he shouldn't forget that if anyone gets in his way, he'll follow them to the ends of the earth and crush them and destroy their lives bit by bit. Now he'll ask him again, will he be loyal to the Golden Circle, to the bitter end, or will he become his dog? He needs to think about it very carefully, because this is his last chance. Taejun joined the Golden Circle with big dreams. The few cases he's dealt with so far flashed before him like a daze. Then facing this entity made of pure resentment that threatened his entire life, he finally realized that what he was trading for money was someone else's life. And so he bows his head and promises again to become his dog. Kim holds his head and notes he made the right choice. Shang-ho returns the knife and asks if he's sure about letting him go, because he might become a burden on them in the future. Kim tells him to relax. If that happens, he'll be able to show everyone what happens if someone breaks their word to him. He should also check his account after school, because he'll receive the previously mentioned reward. Besides, he'll need one more thing from him to go and bring Jojo now without anyone knowing. Rumors later spread about Kim and Shang-ho's falling out, and the whole school talked about it, which Kim heard, but this was part of his plan. In the principal's office, Chang's brother tries to convince everyone to talk about his brother becoming principal. He points out that, at this rate, their father might hand him the president's position. Can they really handle something like this? Are they really okay with everything they've done for so long? One of the members urges him to relax. It's true that Chang got the opportunity, but he hasn't proven his workplace skills yet, and compared to someone like him, he doesn't have any skills. The brother yells at him that thinking this way is stupid, as their father will definitely choose the eldest. Another member suggests he reconcile with his wife, but it seems he's already tried that, and this makes him angrier. All the members think he was wrong anyway, so it'll take some time to rebuild that trust. He goes to another meeting and a man explains that something's wrong here. Chang was always an idiot, selfish, and a little bastard, and a womanizer, and that's exactly why they all chose to follow him instead of that man. But based on his recent behavior, it seems someone they don't know yet is backing him behind the scenes. This man is the internal director of Mangjin Construction Company, Kim Chi-jin. The brother asks for more information, and Chi-jin starts explaining. Someone else has revealed their relationship, and Zhang was the only person who could benefit from that. Suddenly, he also started staying at the construction site until the end of the day, and didn't miss a single day of work. Additionally, he even handled the concrete incident in a way that pleased his father. He suggested they demolish the entire building and start construction from scratch. But did he really think something like this was possible from the usual Zhang? None of this was a sudden change of heart. Rather, it was completely planned. Surely someone is telling him what to do, but the real problem is, they don't know who it is. The brother asks what they can do in such a situation, and Chi-jin suggests they find this mysterious person and do it quickly. So they start spying on Zhang. At 6 a.m., he goes to inspect the construction project and manage its safety. At 2 p.m., he has lunch with the project manager, and at 8 p.m., he has dinner with an ordinary friend of his. Chun-wook feels frustrated for not finding any evidence that incriminates him working with someone, and his men start suggesting different people. Maybe it was Judge Hang, since there's talk of marriage going around, but the brother denies this because Judge Hang hates his brother so much. Manager Kang's name was also thrown out as an idea, but again the idea is rejected because he's too simple a man. Another suggests Sun Shin Construction Company since he heard their son is close to Zhang. Chun-wook explains that the CEO of that company is currently on good terms with him, so it's not possible for him to do something like this. Suddenly, one of his men discovers there's something strange in his cash flows, where huge amounts of money are going to Chanel High School, whether scholarships, gyms, or even swimming pools. Chun-wook tells them not to worry about it. Zhang was always throwing money at useless things. One time, he got into real trouble with their father after paying off a girl's debt at a bar. They all mock the idea that the school could be something worthwhile, but Chi-jin starts analyzing it more deeply, as it might prove to be useful evidence. Suddenly, a hidden number calls Chun-suk, and he ignores it because he has enough problems, but then he receives a text message from that caller. The message indicates that he is Zhang's supporter and wants to speak with him privately if possible. Earlier, Zhang called Kim and told him that someone was probably following him, as one of the thugs had been following him with a camera for a whole week now. Nothing has happened yet, but he'll be more careful from now on. He might also be in danger as Chun-suk might try to discover him. Kim asks if he's afraid his brother will offer him a better deal, but that won't happen. He trusts him, doesn't he? So he should get him a phone with a fake identity, and he'll handle everything now. Chun-wook stands with Chi-jin and asks what they should do once they find the supporter. Chi-jin suggested two things. Since he turned Jong from an unlikable person into an administrative manager, he must be very skilled, so they can recruit him to their side and deal a strong blow to Jong. However, if he doesn't join them, they'll simply have to get rid of him. With a disguised voice, Kim asks Chun-suk why he's been looking for him all this time. He thinks it's better to be frank with this man and offer to recruit him. Jong barely graduated from high school, while he has a diploma from a prestigious university. Jong lived his life in bars while he gained a lot of experience from his accounts and work. So based on this, who is more suitable to become president? Their father will eventually appoint someone who grows the company anyway. Kim asks how he's sure of that, and Chun-wook says it's very simple because this is how the company has advanced so far. Their father could even give the entire company to a management specialist if it meant it would advance, so Jong becoming president is a pipe dream. He knows that too, doesn't he? That's why he called in the first place. Kim points out that if that's the case, he has one condition. When Chun-wook returns from his conversation with Kim, he tells everyone that Jong's supporter called him, as he probably thinks he's more suitable to become president. He didn't ask for much either. He only wanted the position of internal director. Chi-jin urges him to reconsider, since this position is important, and he doesn't know the man yet. But Chun-wook slams the table and tells him to shut up already. He doesn't have the damn right to say that because he watched Jong advance and did nothing. He's finally bringing someone competent to the company, so he should think about his words from now on. Chi-jin remains calm and points out that it's not that simple. There was no negative reaction to him becoming a manager, but the position he offered his supporter is something they give to people who have at least 20 years of experience in the company. Now, he's not suggesting they keep him that long, but they should at least test him. Chun-wook tells him to stop talking because traditions are too annoying sometimes, and he'll change them once he becomes president. All they have to do is think of one thing. When he becomes president, everyone here is promised compensation that should be enough, right? With that, he suddenly ends the meeting because he's tired, but Chi-jin is very shocked by what just happened. However, he knows that Chun-suk is also bad, a selfish, abusive, and treacherous person. He knows full well he's not a good person, but he would never approach him if he weren't the president's son. Even after all this, he continued to support him because he's the lesser evil compared to Jong, who doesn't care about the company. He felt that Chun-suk would at least put in more effort. However, when traditions are ignored, cracks will surely appear, and eventually Chun-suk will be the one to destroy this company. Even if it hurts him, he needs to talk to the president now for the sake of the company and for the sake of the people who have dedicated their entire lives to it. Suddenly, he receives a call from an unknown number, and when he answers, the person immediately asks if he agrees with Chang-wook's decision because it might seem too harsh. Chi-jin asks who he is and whether this is some kind of mockery, but the person on the phone confirms it's not because he wasn't interested in being part of the board in the first place. He just wanted to tell him that Chun-wook and Jong are very different from what he thinks. Chi-jin doesn't want to believe it, but Kim, who was on the phone, points out that Mongjin Construction is a company built on tradition, and in some companies anyone can take on the position of director. However, anyone who understands the president's will and the future that Mongjin Construction aspires to would not have promised this position so lightly. In fact, he's very proud to be the internal director. Chiljin asks him to get to the point already, and Kim complies. He should help Jong instead, because he's not that bastard he used to be, and he shouldn't think of this as betrayal. He's just informing him of how much he wants to work with him in Mongjin Construction, which has a promising future. After a few days, Chil-jin meets Jong and asks him directly who his backer is. Chin replies that he can't tell him, so he should understand. Chil-jin asks him if he remembers how he used to come to the site since he was young. Jong doesn't seem to remember that, and Chil-jin explains that it wasn't a big project back then like it is now, because they had just started. He must have been about 3 to 4 years old, and was always using his small, chubby hands to carry bricks and help them build. His heart was pounding hard from his chest. Even if he wasn't his son, just seeing him grow strong and healthy under his father's care made him feel satisfied, so he always had high hopes for him. However, he can't lie. He was disappointed when he grew up, because he was always going to school instead of the president, because he was always hitting someone. Mongjin continued to grow rapidly, but he was always drinking, partying, and getting into trouble, which is why he started to believe he wasn't the right person for the position of president. And if a family member was going to inherit everything anyway, he thought it would be better for Chun-suk to be the heir, because he was always struggling to be noticed. But he might wonder why he's thinking about all this when he's just a manager, because he gave everything he had to Mongjin Construction, just like his father, because he can't let it fall into the hands of a miserable man who can't even take care of himself properly. However, he noticed he's changed recently, and it doesn't doesn't matter who helped him, as long as he's achieving results for the company. That's all that matters. He won't dig into it anymore, so he'll say this now. Mongjin Construction needs people like him, and he looks forward to working with him from now on. In a small restaurant located between a small shop and a food cafe, Grandma Kim works hard to feed everyone despite having few customers, saying she shouldn't push herself too much. She thinks this is normal. However, she must work hard to save money for her grandson's tuition fees. Suddenly, someone calls her cell phone, and when she answers, a real estate agent notices that if she won the lottery contract for Nobles Apartments, she should just sell him the pre-sale rights, and he promises to pay at least $5,000 as a bonus. Later, while Kim is having dinner, he talks with his grandmother and asks her why she still works at the restaurant when she doesn't need to, since he gives her some money and she also has her pension to rely on. The grandmother still feels the need to work because this money is from the scholarship he receives for being a good student. She also wonders how the real estate agents discovered their win, as they won't stop calling her. She receives dozens of calls every day. Kim asks her to explain in more detail, and she says they've been talking nonsense all the time. One offered $5,000, while another offered $6,000. Kim thinks that after the recent concrete pouring incident, the value of Mongjin's brand has increased significantly. Additionally, Nobles is a first-class apartment in a prime location in Daesan. Just renting it out would be enough to recover the sale price. These real estate agents are undervaluing at only $6,000 for such an important property. The grandmother wonders if this is fraud, and if she should sell it if it's not. Kim points out that they're not making those calls for her sake, so she shouldn't sell it no matter what. The grandmother explains that the down payment alone is $200 million. How could she get such a large amount? Thanks to him and his help, they managed to get the pre-purchase right for the house, but $200 million is a very large amount. Kim thinks he has the down payment in a bank account Chang gave him, but he can't tell her that now. Can he? This apartment is a home for the three of them, a permanent home, so he won't give it up no matter what it costs. He puts his hand on hers and says she can pay the money more easily these days, and they can also rent it out. She shouldn't worry. He'll find a solution. She touches his face and feels happy to have a grandson she can rely on. Suddenly, he receives a call and apologizes because he needs to answer it. When he answers, the person on the phone speaks on behalf of the academy and explains that his brother Hun didn't attend class today. It seems Hun spent all his time at the library and is now returning, wanting to come back according to the academy's schedule. He looks at a group of kids, not much younger than him, enjoying playing a simple game of rock, paper, scissors. He envies them somewhat because they can still have fun without thinking about other things yet. Hun pulls himself out of these thoughts because he needs to prove himself, prove that he can succeed without going to a private academy. While he's lost in thought, he suddenly bumps into someone. This person is his brother Kim. They sit on a bench and Kim explains that he was at his academy and they told him he suddenly left it. Hun apologizes for not telling him earlier, but he's old enough to understand everything. His hands and face tell him everything he needs to know. How can he attend the academy when he and their grandmother must earn money with great difficulty? If only one of them can get a chance to learn, it should be him. So they should just switch roles. He works while Kim achieves a prestigious academic life, since his grades are better anyway. Kim is shocked by his words and thinks that after spending 5 years in a coma, Hun vowed to become a police officer and take revenge on the bastards who dared to do that to him. But Hun had to pay the hospital bills for him and their grandmother, and even if he spent all his time studying, he couldn't pass the exam. In the end, his family was the only thing that held him back. He struggled for his family, but fell in the same place they fell. He vowed he would never let that happen again. To reassure his fears, Kim shows him the message he received about winning an apartment in a lottery in Yonggang District, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Daesan. Hun is surprised, but at that moment, Chung arrives in his car, and when he gets out, he notes that he never would have imagined he'd be at a library. He introduces himself to Hun as the eldest son of Mongjin Construction Company and his brother's greatest ally, and if he doesn't believe him, he can look him up online. He sits between them and explains that since he's helping his brother with a scholarship, he should also pay his tuition fees. It's the least he can do. Hoon announces he'll return to his teacher for a moment, and while doing so, Kim thanks Chung for coming at such a late hour, but Chung notes it wasn't that important. He should take care of his dearest friends, right? Chung also hands him the information he requested about the three people, and also announces that Choi Jin is now completely on their side. So what should they do next? Kim explains that they previously talked about a certain piece of land, specifically Yongwoo Real Estate in Song District. The first thing on their agenda is to get close to the real estate agent there. Then he should contact him as soon as a new property is put up for sale.